In a quiet village under the dark August sky, Anna sits alone on her porch, shivering in the cold air that matches the ache of loneliness in her heart. 40 days have passed since she buried her beloved husband, Miguel, and every corner of their home echoes with memories of the life they shared. Together, they had built a life of love, dreams, and hard work, transforming their countryside haven into a flourishing farm. Yet now, Anna is left with the unbearable weight of grief, uncertain how to move forward without him. But amidst the pain, Anna finds herself surrounded by people who care, and even in the deepest sorrow, there is a spark of hope. Guided by the wisdom of an unexpected friendship and the strength of her love for Miguel, Anna begins to rebuild her life, one step at a time. As she faces the challenges ahead, she learns that healing doesn't mean forgetting, but rather honoring the love she had by living fully once more. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. The night had descended like a velvet curtain, and an eerie hush fell over the village. The once lively chorus of barking dogs had faded into nothingness, and the warm glow from the windows of the cozy homes had dimmed, leaving only darkness. The silence was so profound it felt almost tangible, a tension that hung in the air, pressing down like a weight. The world was slipping into the embrace of sleep, a slumber that would last until the first light of dawn gently coaxed it back to life, revealing its vivid hues once more. Anna, a woman in the prime of her 30s, sat alone on her porch, her gaze fixed on the vast, inky sky above. The stars, twinkling with an intensity reserved for the clear August nights, seemed like countless tiny diamonds scattered across a black velvet canvas. The chill in the air cut through her, causing her to shiver as she pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders, seeking warmth that the night refused to offer. Everything she once knew had faded away, and soon the harsh bite of frost would descend upon the land. The sorrow that welled up inside her wasn't merely due to the cold, nor was it solely because of the changing seasons. It was the hollow ache of loneliness that had taken root deep in her heart. 40 agonizing days had passed since she had laid her beloved husband to rest. As Anna stared up at the stars, memories of the nights she and Miguel spent on this very porch flooded her mind. They would sit for hours side by side, under the same expanse of sky. Occasionally, a shooting star would streak across the heavens, and Miguel, with his quick smile, would always manage to make a wish in time. Anna, on the other hand, would hesitate, her wishes too complex, too heavy for a fleeting moment. Miguel would laugh, his voice full of warmth, teasing her gently. "Your wishes are too long, Anna. You need to wish for something simpler." But how could she? Her only wish, the deepest desire of her heart, was to cradle a child in her arms. But that simple wish had remained heartbreakingly out of reach. For nearly a decade, Anna and Miguel had nurtured the dream of becoming parents, a dream that seemed more elusive with each passing year. They had endured countless visits to doctors, faced diagnosis after diagnosis, and undergone test after test, all in vain. Even the best specialists in the capital had been unable to offer them hope. Anna vividly recalled the days of waiting for test results, the anxiety that gnawed at her insides, and the crushing disappointment when the results came back unchanged. Infertility. The despair was overwhelming, and at times, she felt as if she was losing her grip on reality. She would find herself wandering the streets, drawn to the sight of baby strollers, her heart aching as she imagined herself pushing one, a tiny life inside. But fate, in its cruelty, had denied her that joy. Anna was barren, her dream of motherhood forever out of reach. Now, as she sat alone, with only the cold night and her sorrow for company, Anna felt the full weight of her loss. The world seemed vast and empty, a place where her dreams had withered and died, leaving her to face the unforgiving reality of her solitude. Miguel had once gently suggested the idea of adopting a child from an orphanage, hoping it might fill the void they both felt. However, Anna, with a heavy heart, confessed that she could never bring herself to love a child that wasn't her flesh and blood. The idea of nurturing and raising a child she hadn't carried inside her, hadn't felt grow within her womb, was a daunting obstacle she couldn't overcome. It wasn't that she didn't love children. She adored watching them play, seeing the joy in their innocent faces. But the thought of caring for a child that wasn't biologically hers felt like a chasm she couldn't cross, a fear that biological mothers never had to confront. Miguel, understanding the depth of his wife's feelings, didn't push the matter any further. He simply held her hand, his love unwavering, as they continued to navigate their life together. Their life in the countryside was a testament to their resilience and adaptability. Although they had both been born and raised in the city, fate had led them to this rural haven. After their wedding, Miguel's business in the city, a modest auto parts shop that had once provided a comfortable living, began to crumble. The economy took a turn for the worse, and crisis after crisis battered the small business until it was no longer sustainable. The realization that he was operating at a loss was a heavy burden for Miguel, one that pushed him to consider a drastic change. It was around this time that Anna's grandmother, who had lived her entire life in a small village, passed away, leaving Anna a quaint little cottage. This woman had been a beacon of warmth and kindness, and her passing struck Anna deeply. During the funeral, as Miguel stood by his grieving wife, offering her the strength she desperately needed, he found himself drawn to the simplicity and beauty of the rural landscape. The conversations he had with the local villagers during the memorial opened his eyes to the untapped potential in farming, a path he had never considered before. With a mix of hope and desperation, Miguel sold his failing business in the city, took out a loan, and decided to build a new life on this land. And, despite her grief, stood by him, supporting his decision wholeheartedly. She, too, had cherished the time spent at her grandmother's village home during her childhood. Deep down, she had always dreamed of escaping the chaos of the city for the serenity of the countryside, where life moved at a gentler pace. Though their parents were initially perplexed by their decision, they never openly questioned it. And soon enough, it became clear that Miguel's gamble had paid off. Over the years, Miguel poured his soul into restoring the land that had been neglected for so long. Under his care, fields that had once been barren flourished, stretching out like golden seas under the sun. The barn, once silent, now echoed with the contented sounds of cows, and the farmyard buzzed with the activity of modern machinery. During harvest season, the hum of the dryer filled the air, audible throughout the entire village. But instead of annoyance, this sound brought joy to the villagers, for it signified prosperity and the return of work to their community. All thanks to Miguel's relentless efforts. Miguel was a force of nature, his energy seemingly boundless. Here, on this land, he discovered that one didn't need to be tethered to the city to find success. With Anna by his side, he built a new house next to her grandmother's cottage, a symbol of their fresh start. Together, they planted a garden, filling it with flowers and plants that brought life to the once somber place. But Miguel's dreams didn't stop there. He envisioned creating a vast fruit orchard, not just with the typical apples and cherries, but with an array of fruits, quinces, pears, and grapes, that would thrive under the countryside's nurturing embrace. In this quiet corner of the world, they had carved out a life of meaning and fulfillment, far from the noise and stress of the city. It was a life built on hard work, love, and the unwavering belief that they could make something beautiful out of the challenges they faced. And though their path hadn't led them to the joys of parenthood, they had found another kind of legacy, one that would endure in the fields they had sown and the community they had helped revive. As Miguel's passion for horticulture grew, he dedicated himself to learning everything he could about the art of cultivating plants. He would lose himself for hours in the pages of specialized books, devouring every piece of knowledge they offered. To fully immerse himself in his studies, Miguel had transformed a forgotten corner of an old barn into his sanctuary. This makeshift study was simple, just a chair, a table, a lamp, and a small stove to ward off the chill on cold nights. Anna often wondered why he didn't set up his study inside their home, where he could be more comfortable. But Miguel would chuckle and say that he felt more connected to nature in that rustic space, surrounded by the sounds and smells of the earth. Despite his easygoing laughter, there was a seriousness to Miguel's new pursuit. He made it clear to Anna that the barn was off-limits when he wasn't there, keeping the door firmly locked. Anna didn't take offense. She respected his need for solitude and focus, understanding that this was his new passion, something that gave him a sense of purpose and fulfillment. She loved him too much to disrupt that. After his long days of farm work, Miguel would dive into his gardening books with a fervor, often seeking advice from nurseries to further his understanding. His dream of creating a flourishing orchard was steadily taking shape in his mind. He had already prepared the land, envisioning rows of trees heavy with fruit. Everything seemed to be falling into place, until one fateful afternoon when a sharp pain in Miguel's back marked the beginning of a nightmare. Earlier that day, Miguel had helped some workers unload heavy bags of cement. He brushed off the pain, attributing it to overexertion, and even dismissed Anna's concerns when she scolded him for taking on such strenuous tasks. "Why do you always have to do everything yourself?" she chided. "You've hired workers for a reason. Let them do the heavy lifting." But Miguel, ever the dedicated worker, waved her off with a grin. "If I hadn't pitched in, it would have taken twice as long. And with that drizzle, the cement could have gotten ruined." He shrugged off her worry, rubbed some ointment on his aching back, and headed to his study, determined to finish some paperwork for a new farming program that offered incentives for buying a combine. He was determined to take advantage of it, and there was no time to waste. Anna shook her head, concerned but knowing how stubborn her husband could be. "You don't take care of yourself," she muttered, her voice tinged with frustration. "The farm isn't going anywhere. It'll still be there tomorrow." Miguel gave her a faint smile, trying to ease her worry. "I'll just sit for half an hour," he promised, but Anna could see the weariness in his eyes. He joked about his back pain, urging her to go to bed. "Just a little longer," he reassured her when she pressed him to rest, and reluctantly, she left him to his work. As she lay down, exhaustion pulled her into a deep sleep almost immediately. But the next morning, a strange unease gnawed at her, pulling her from sleep before the sun had fully risen. The bed beside her was cold and empty. Miguel hadn't joined her during the night. Anna's heart began to race as she got up, thinking he might have fallen asleep in the living room. But when she entered the room, a horrifying sight met her eyes. Miguel was lying on the floor, face down. For a fleeting second, she thought he was simply sleeping, but something about the way he lay sent a shock of fear through her. He looked wrong, unnatural. Panic seized her as she rushed to his side, her hands trembling as she reached out to touch him. His skin was cold, lifeless. The reality of it hit her like a blow, stealing the breath from her lungs. Miguel was gone. The man who had been her rock, her partner, her love, was no longer alive. At that moment, Anna's world crumbled around her, leaving her alone in the silence, with nothing but the echo of her last words to him, words that now seemed so tragically insufficient. Anna's scream pierced the early morning silence, a cry so raw and full of anguish that it sent shivers down the spines of everyone who heard it. The neighbors, alarmed and worried, rushed over to find her crumpled on the floor beside Miguel's lifeless body. They quickly called for help, but deep down, they knew there was nothing to be done. The vibrant, tireless man they had known was gone. Later, at the morgue, Anna listened in disbelief as the pathologist explained that Miguel's heart had been as fragile as a tattered piece of cloth, as if it belonged to an elderly man of 80. How could this be? Miguel had never once complained about his heart. He was strong and healthy. He didn't smoke, didn't drink excessively, and never let trivial matters upset him. The pathologist's words echoed in her mind. Not complaining doesn't mean it wasn't there. That was Miguel to the core. He was the type of man who would shrug off any discomfort, pushing through the pain with quiet resolve. If something bothered him, he'd take a pill, brush it aside, and carry on with his work, never allowing himself to be slowed down. His passion for the farm, for the life they had built together, had driven him to the point of exhaustion. His relentless dedication had taken its toll, silently wearing down his heart until it could no longer bear the burden. A heart attack, a myocardial infarction, death. It all seemed so surreal, so incomprehensible to Anna. How could it have happened so suddenly, so brutally? Miguel's death sent shockwaves through the community. People from the city, every villager, and fellow farmers came together to pay their respects. Miguel had been admired and respected by all, and his loss was deeply felt by everyone who knew him. But the grief that weighed heaviest was that of his parents. Ana couldn't wrap her mind around the fact that he was truly gone. The man who had been her everything, her anchor, was now just a memory. After the funeral, Miguel's parents, heartbroken and concerned for Ana, urged her to return to the city with them. They feared for her, living alone on the farm, surrounded by reminders of the life she had lost. But Ana refused. She couldn't abandon the legacy Miguel had left behind. The farm wasn't just a business. It was Miguel's dream, his passion, the very essence of who he was. To leave it now would be to let that dream die with him, and Ana couldn't bear the thought. She didn't know much about running a farm, but she was determined to learn. Miguel's parents, though devastated, were grateful for her resolve. They knew how much the farm had meant to their son, and they trusted that Ana would do everything in her power to preserve and honor his memory. Perhaps, they hoped, she could even build upon his work, ensuring that his name would be remembered for generations to come. And so, 40 long, grief-filled days passed. During that time, Carlos, a seasoned manager with deep roots in the area, had taken on the day-to-day responsibilities of running the farm. He was reliable, experienced, and trustworthy. Everything Ana needed as she navigated her new reality. But as the days turned into weeks, Ana began to feel the full weight of the burden she had shouldered. The farm, once a symbol of hope and renewal, now felt like an overwhelming responsibility, a constant reminder of the man she had lost. One night, as Ana sat alone on the porch, staring up at the night sky, her thoughts were darker and more despairing than ever before. The stars, which had once brought her comfort, now seemed cold and distant. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw a bright star streak across the heavens. It seemed to linger in the sky longer than usual, as if pausing to listen to her unspoken wish. Without thinking, Ana whispered a few heartfelt words that she couldn't even fully comprehend at the moment. When she realized what she had done, she scolded herself bitterly. Why now? Why make a wish when Miguel was no longer here to share it with her? Now, she was truly alone, and the loneliness felt like a void that would never be filled. That star had been her last connection to Miguel, a final moment of shared hope. But now, all she had was the memory of a love that had been tragically cut short, and the realization that she would have to face the rest of her life without him. Ana made a vow to herself that she would never dwell on this painful subject again. But the heart is not so easily silenced. That night, lying alone under the darkened sky, she whispered words she had never dared to say out loud before. I want a child. As soon as the words left her lips, the star she had been watching flickered out, vanishing into the cold void. Ana shivered, not just from the sudden chill that gripped the air, but from the unsettling thought that perhaps her wish had come too late. The temperature fluctuations in August were strange, scorching during the day, and now, in the dead of night, almost bitterly cold. She consoled herself with the thought that as long as frost hadn't yet arrived, there was still some time left. She sighed a deep, weary breath that seemed to carry the weight of her grief and rose from the porch. She needed to rest. Tomorrow, she would hand over the library to the new employee, a task that signaled the end of one chapter of her life. Then, she would throw herself back into the work of the fields. Carlos was doing an admirable job, but Ana knew she needed to immerse herself in the labor too. Maybe it was for the best. The constant activity would leave little room for mourning, and perhaps the heavy thoughts would eventually recede into the background. But as she drifted off to sleep that night, tears still flowed from her eyes, memories of Miguel flooding her mind. How deeply she had loved him and how that love still burned within her. Her sleep was filled with dreams, vivid and tender. She dreamed she was cradling a baby, feeling the soft weight in her arms, the warmth, the sweet scent of the baby's head. The child looked up at her with bright, innocent eyes and smiled, and Anna's heart swelled with a happiness she hadn't felt in so long. When she woke, there was a smile on her lips, a rare and unexpected gift from her dream. She tried to hold onto the feeling, to remember every detail. Was it a boy or a girl? She couldn't say, but the sensation of maternal joy lingered as if she had truly held her child, the child she and Miguel had longed for. Yet, as quickly as the dream had lifted her spirits, reality came crashing down. The child's eyes, they were so much like Miguel's. The memory of her husband's gentle gaze immediately wiped the smile from her face. What a beautiful dream it had been. But now, painfully, she knew it was just that. A dream and nothing more. With a heavy heart, Anna sighed again, rising from her bed to begin the day. She moved to the kitchen to prepare breakfast, trying to push the thoughts from her mind. As she reached for a cup, her hand hesitated. She had grabbed Miguel's favorite mug, the one he always used. The sight of it was like a stab to the heart, and when she picked up the small spoon he had always used to stir his coffee, her hand trembled. While the kettle boiled, Anna found herself sitting in Miguel's chair by the window, holding the spoon close to her lips as if it could somehow bring her closer to him. Her thoughts drifted back to the city and to her parents' persistent pleas for her to return. Maybe they were right. Everything in this house, on this farm, reminded her of Miguel. Every object, every corner was filled with his presence. And it was this constant reminder that made her loss so unbearably painful. The realization that she would never see him again, never hear his voice, was a wound that seemed to deepen with each passing day. Sitting there, in his chair, Anna felt the full weight of her grief. The life they had built together, filled with love and dreams, was now just a shadow of what it had been. And yet, as much as it hurt, she couldn't bring herself to leave. This was where Miguel had poured his heart and soul, and in every blade of grass, every tree they had planted, his spirit lived on. The thought of abandoning it, of leaving behind the last pieces of him, was unbearable. But the pain of staying, of waking up each morning in an empty bed, sitting at a table set for one, and living in a world that had lost its color, was almost too much to bear. Anna knew she had a difficult decision to make, one that would shape the rest of her life. Would she find the strength to carry on Miguel's legacy here, surrounded by the ghosts of their shared past? Or would she seek solace elsewhere, where the memories might not haunt her so deeply? As she pondered this, the kettle whistled, pulling her back to the present. Anna rose to make her tea, her movements slow and deliberate as if weighed down by the enormity of her grief. Today, like every day, she would try to carry on, but the emptiness inside her seemed to grow with each passing hour. Still, she knew she had to keep going if only to honor the man she had loved so deeply and lost so tragically. The kettle had long gone silent, its whistle a distant memory. Yet Anna remained seated, lost in her thoughts, staring blankly into the emptiness before her. The decision she was contemplating weighed heavily on her. But finally, she spoke aloud, as if declaring her resolve to the universe itself. "I'm not going anywhere," she whispered, her voice firm despite the stillness around her. With a deep breath, she reached for the kettle, poured herself a cup of coffee, and set about getting ready for the day. There was no time to linger in sorrow. The tasks at hand demanded her attention. Soon, she was out the door and hurrying to the library. As she approached, she saw Nina standing by the closed door, waiting patiently. This was the woman to whom Anna would be entrusting her beloved library, the place that had been her sanctuary for so long. Though she was determined to move forward, Anna couldn't shake the apprehension she felt toward Nina. Nina was a formidable figure in the village, having spent her entire career at the local school, where she had risen to the rank of principal. She was known for her strict, no-nonsense demeanor, a woman who spoke little but whose words always carried weight. Her authority was unquestioned, and the respect she commanded was almost palpable. It had been 3 years since Nina retired, and during that time, she hadn't shown any inclination to return to work. But when Anna decided to step down from her role at the library, the village was left in a bind. Finding a replacement with the same level of responsibility and dedication was no easy task. The farm was crucial to the village's survival, and everyone knew that if it failed, they would all suffer the consequences. Reluctantly, the village council president approached Nina with a request to take over the library, at least temporarily. Nina, after some consideration, agreed. She knew the importance of the library to the community and recognized that there was no one else better suited for the job. When Anna finally arrived, slightly out of breath and apologetic for her tardiness, Nina greeted her with her characteristic directness. "Take your time," Nina said, her voice steady and composed. "I'm sorry," Anna replied, still catching her breath. "I misjudged the time and overslept a little." Nina's response was sharp but not unkind. "If you're going to run the farm like this, it won't go well." Anna felt a flash of irritation and the urge to retort, but she held her tongue. After all, could she afford to be blunt with a woman who had been the village's school principal for so many years? Besides, the two of them would be working closely together for some time yet. There was much to be done at the library. Books to be checked against the catalog, the district committee to wait on, and all the necessary documentation to complete. It would take time, and Anna knew she needed Nina's experience and guidance to ensure everything was handled correctly. By the time they finished their work for the day, the sun was already setting, casting long shadows across the village. As they stepped out of the old log library, Anna couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. "I didn't have time to visit the field today," she said quietly, her voice tinged with sadness. "I hope Carlos can manage everything on his own." Nina gave her a reassuring look. "He will. You can trust Carlos. He's a skilled agronomist and a competent manager, but he still needs help. He's not very good with paperwork and hasn't yet learned how to navigate the bureaucratic side of things. You can handle that, Anna," Nina continued, her tone encouraging. "Yes, Nina," Anna responded softly, her voice filled with determination. "I can't let Miguel down." Nina nodded approvingly. "That's the right attitude," she said, her voice carrying the weight of her years of experience. Then, as she looked at Anna, her expression softened. "Dear, would you like to come over for a cup of tea?" The invitation caught Anna off guard. "Yes, that would be nice," she replied, a hint of surprise in her voice. "Come to my house," Nina offered warmly. "I haven't prepared anything, but we'll figure something out." Anna smiled, feeling a small but welcome shift in their relationship. "We don't need much, just hot water and a bit of tea will do." Nina's smile widened, a rare expression of genuine warmth. "Exactly," she said with a light chuckle. "That's all we need." As they walked to Nina's house, Anna began to see her in a new light. The strict, authoritarian woman she had heard so much about seemed to melt away, replaced by someone kinder, more approachable. Somewhere in the day's work, they had forged a connection, perhaps even a budding friendship. Nina was no longer just the tough former principal. She was a woman, like Anna, who had lived a life full of challenges and triumphs, and who, beneath her stern exterior, had a kind heart and a gentle smile. Once inside, Anna moved with ease around the kitchen, feeling a sense of comfort she hadn't expected. As she prepared the tea, Nina wandered through the rooms, her presence more relaxed and at peace. They shared the simple pleasure of a warm drink and quiet conversation, and in that moment, Anna felt a small spark of hope. She wasn't as alone as she had feared. With people like Nina by her side, perhaps she could find the strength to keep going, to honor Miguel's memory by living fully, even in the face of such deep loss. "Miguel built a wonderful home," Nina remarked as she stepped into the kitchen, her eyes taking in the solid craftsmanship and the warmth that filled the space. "Everything is so well made, so carefully thought out. He was truly a talented man, and you, Anna, are an exceptional homemaker. This place is so inviting, so cozy." But Anna's heart ached at the words. "Who needs this coziness now?" she whispered, her voice trembling as she fought back tears. "I can't bear to be in this house anymore. Everywhere I look, I see him. Tomorrow morning, I'll go to the office and then straight to the fields. I need to keep busy." Nina watched her carefully, her expression softening with empathy. "It's good that you're channeling your energy into something productive, but you must be careful not to tear yourself apart in the process," she advised gently, settling into a chair at the table. "I know it's hard right now, with every corner of this house reminding you of Miguel, but you're pushing yourself so hard because you feel that's what you must do. Anna was taken aback by the older woman's insight, and she looked at her guest with surprise. Nina continued, her tone firm but caring. First of all, you need to put away Miguel's things. Store them somewhere out of sight. Why is his picture still in the living room? Anna shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. But that's normal, isn't it? She sobbed. How can I just put everything away? Feels like betraying him. These things, these photos, they're all I have left. They're the only things that bring me any comfort. Nina's brow furrowed in concern, but then she sighed deeply, her voice heavy with the weight of her memories. I understand how you feel, but clinging to these things will only deepen your pain. I know it's not easy, and it's not something I say lightly. You know what I've been through. As they sipped their tea, Nina began to share the story of her past, one that Anna had never known. In her youth, while studying in the city, Nina married her first husband, a man she adored. They were deeply in love, and when she discovered she was pregnant, she was overjoyed. She planned to take a break from her studies to prepare for their new life together. But fate had other plans. Her husband was struck by a car and died in the hospital, and not long after, Nina suffered a late-term miscarriage. The doctors told her she would never be able to have children. The loss was devastating. Her beloved husband was gone, and with him, the future they had dreamed of together. The grief was unbearable, and Nina felt as though the very meaning of her life had been ripped away. Her mother, seeing her daughter's despair, brought her back to the countryside, where slowly, over time, Nina began to heal. She completed her university studies remotely and took a teaching job at the local school. Life began to find a new rhythm, though the pain of her loss remained. It was at a district teachers' meeting that Nina met Antonio. He was a math teacher in a nearby village, young, intelligent, and kind. She heard whispers among their colleagues that he was a widower. His wife had tragically died during childbirth, leaving him to raise their 3-year-old son, Luis, on his own. When Nina learned of his situation, her heart went out to him. She understood the depth of his sorrow, having walked a similar path herself. Their first meeting was brief, a chance encounter in a local cafe. After the meeting, they exchanged smiles, and Antonio suggested they sit together. They spoke of work, of students, of the challenges they faced as educators, and found an easy connection in their shared experiences. That initial conversation led to more meetings, and soon Antonio was visiting Nina at her home. They talked about their pasts, their losses, and their hopes for the future. Antonio's mother, who lived with him, also grew fond of Nina. As time passed, Nina realized that she was developing feelings for Antonio, and those feelings were reciprocated. By Christmas, they had become a family in all but name, spending the holiday together. Nina, Antonio, Luis, and Antonio's mother. The warmth and love that had been missing from Nina's life began to return, and when spring arrived, they were married. From the very beginning, little Luis had called Nina Mom, and she embraced him as her own. Though she had lost her first husband and the chance to have her children, life had given her a second chance at happiness and motherhood. As Nina finished her story, Anna sat quietly, absorbing the weight of what she had just heard. She hadn't known the depth of the pain Nina had carried, nor the strength it had taken for her to rebuild her life. But now, sitting together in the warmth of the kitchen, Anna understood that Nina wasn't just offering advice. She was sharing hard-earned wisdom, born from her own experience of loss and healing. You have the strength to move forward, Anna, Nina said softly, but you need to permit yourself to let go of the past, to make room for whatever comes next. It's not a betrayal. It's a way to honor the love you shared with Miguel by allowing yourself to live fully again. Anna nodded slowly, her heart heavy but touched by Nina's words. She realized that the path ahead wouldn't be easy, but perhaps with time, she could find her way to heal, just as Nina had. As they sat there together, the bonds of friendship between them grew stronger, a quiet understanding passing between them that they would face whatever came next, together. Luis was thriving in the city, having risen to the ranks of a high-ranking professional. He visited his parents during the holidays, always bringing his wife and their 2 daughters. Nina adored her granddaughters, and the anticipation of her son's visits filled her with joy and excitement. When Anna heard the story, she was taken aback. "Wow," she said, genuinely surprised. "I had no idea Luis wasn't your biological son. No one in the village ever mentioned it." Nina smiled warmly. "He may not be my biological son, but he is my real son in every way that matters. People don't talk about it because it's something that's been forgotten over time. Perhaps it's because I became his real mother. Luis knows the truth, but it doesn't change anything for him. That's just how life turned out." She paused, then added, "The reason I'm telling you this, Anna, is because you need to understand that life doesn't end with the loss of a loved one. It continues, and you have to find a way to live it." As Nina prepared to leave, she repeated softly, "Life doesn't end, Anna. Remember that." As Anna drifted off to sleep that night, Nina's words echoed in her mind, comforting yet challenging. When morning came, she rose with a newfound sense of purpose, ready to face the day. She dressed for her new role, bracing herself for the challenges ahead. When she arrived at the office, Carlos was already there, waiting for her. "Happy first day of work?" Anna greeted him with a smile, trying to mask her lingering nervousness. "Thank you, Anna," Carlos responded with a nod. "Are you coming to the field with me, or will you stay here?" "I'll stay here," Anna decided, her voice steady. "I want to go through the documents and get a better understanding of things." "That's the right call," Carlos agreed. "I can handle the boys in the field, but the paperwork? That's where I struggle. If you need any help, don't hesitate to ask Madeline." Madeline, an experienced accountant who had been with the farm for many years, was an invaluable guide. In just one day, she walked Anna through a myriad of topics, helping her grasp the intricacies of farm management. It was clear, however, that the transition from librarian to farm manager wouldn't be easy. Still, Anna felt a surge of determination. Despite the overwhelming amount of work, she realized she could do it. She had good people around her, people who were ready to support her. Miguel had indeed chosen his team well. That evening, Anna returned home, exhausted from the day's mental exertion. The paperwork had given her a slight headache, but it hadn't shaken her newfound confidence as the farm's leader. She decided to take a brief rest before diving back into the documents, much like Miguel used to do. She remembered that Miguel had never managed to purchase that new harvester. Although she knew she wouldn't have time to organize the necessary documentation for the discounted purchase now, winter was fast approaching, and she needed to figure out how to protect the livestock from the cold. Her thoughts were consumed by the tasks ahead as she crossed the threshold of her home. But as soon as she stepped inside, the familiar wave of melancholy hit her again. The sight of Miguel's photograph in the living room, his eyes full of life, cut through her heart, bringing tears to her eyes. Remembering Nina's advice, Anna realized it was time to stop mourning and start moving forward. She couldn't continue to live in the past, surrounded by constant reminders of what she had lost. With a resolute sigh, she set aside the documents she had brought home and went to the storage room, where she retrieved 2 large cardboard boxes. She began packing away everything that reminded her of Miguel. His possessions, the souvenirs they had collected together, even his favorite cup and spoon. The last item she carefully placed in the box was the portrait with the black ribbon. "Goodbye, my love," she whispered, her voice breaking as she kissed the photograph before placing it gently in the box. With the boxes packed, Anna decided to store them in the shed that Miguel had transformed into his office. Grabbing the key, she turned on the lights and stepped inside the shed. It was the first time she had entered since Miguel had finished organizing the space. This shed had always been Miguel's domain, a place he considered his sanctuary. As she crossed the threshold, Anna silently apologized to her late husband for intruding on his space. But with a deep breath, she pushed aside her doubts and began to inspect the room. To her surprise, the shed was a well-organized workspace. Miguel had lined the walls with drywall, painted them a neutral color, and laid down a simple carpet on the sealed floor. The furniture, though old, was functional and perfectly suited for the space. Anna marveled at how skilled Miguel had been at making the most of what he had. She couldn't help but wonder when he had found the time to set up this office, with both of them always so busy, her with the library and household chores and him with the farm. Why had Miguel never mentioned this office to her? Why had he never invited her in? After placing the boxes in the old wardrobe that stood in the corner, Anna sat down at the desk, a bittersweet smile on her lips. She noticed a neat stack of gardening textbooks and thick notebooks filled with notes. Curious, she picked up one of the notebooks and flipped through it. It was filled with Miguel's handwriting, detailed notes, ideas, and plans. There were even lecture notes, likely borrowed from former agronomy students. As she skimmed the pages, she felt a deep connection to Miguel, as if he were there beside her, sharing his thoughts. Suddenly, as she placed the notebook back on the table, something fell to the floor with a soft thud. Bending down, Anna saw a small, neatly kept key lying at her feet. It appeared to belong to the desk. Her curiosity piqued. She picked it up and hesitated for a moment. What could this key unlock? What secrets had Miguel kept hidden away? Moved by a deep and unsettling curiosity, Anna took the key and examined the desk more closely. At first, there didn't seem to be any compartments that could be locked, but as she opened the door of the larger cabinet, she noticed a small compartment hidden away, securely locked, and it seemed that the key in her hand would fit perfectly. Her heart raced as she turned the key in the lock, 1,000 thoughts running through her mind. Could Miguel have hidden something that she wasn't supposed to know? They had a safe at home for important documents and valuables. Why would he need to hide something here? She tried to convince herself that it was probably just something related to his gardening. Nothing more. But as she pulled out the small drawer and found a rolled-up notebook inside, Anna's breath caught in her throat. There were no labels on the cover, nothing to indicate what it might contain. She hesitated for a moment, then carefully opened the notebook. From the very first lines, it became clear that she had stumbled upon something deeply personal, something Miguel had kept hidden from her throughout their entire marriage. Anna could never have imagined that her beloved husband had secrets, but the writings before her told a different story. She read with bated breath, unable to stop as she devoured the words on each page. The notebook was Miguel's diary. It is commonly believed that a man who keeps a diary is embarrassing or absurd. The diary began. I used to think the same way, but then I realized that by putting my thoughts on paper, at least I could talk to someone, even if it's only myself. Because I can't share this with the person closest to me, my wife. Anna's heart sank as she read on. The diary revealed a side of Miguel she had never known, a past that he had never shared with her. He had led a different life, a life that had once revolved around another woman, Elizabeth. Miguel had known Elizabeth since childhood. They had grown up together, attended parallel classes in school, and even started their first romance in the 9th grade. After the graduation party, their relationship had deepened, and Miguel had fallen deeply in love with her, almost to the point of worship. He had even dreamed of enrolling in law school just to be with her, but his grades weren't good enough. Instead, he ended up at the technical university, a choice he accepted only because there were few applicants that year. As Miguel immersed himself in his studies, he saw less and less of Elizabeth, a fact that troubled him deeply. But Elizabeth seemed relatively indifferent, at least on the surface. Then, one day, Miguel saw her with another man. The sight was like a dagger to his heart. A guy had arrived at her door in an expensive car, carrying a magnificent bouquet of roses, and Elizabeth had wrapped herself around him with a smile that Miguel had once believed was reserved only for him. At that moment, Miguel, a simple student with little to offer in the way of luxury, felt utterly insignificant. But did expensive cars and grand gestures matter in the end? Determined to confront her, Miguel approached them. "What do you want?" Elizabeth laughed when she saw him, her voice cold and dismissive. "You're just a friend, and I love Max." "A friend?" Miguel choked out, swallowing the lump in his throat. "What about everything we had?" "It was just an experience," Elizabeth replied with a casual shrug, before jumping into the car with Max. "Hey man, you got it?" Max added condescendingly as he climbed into the car. "Elizabeth is mine. I wouldn't advise you to approach her again." And with that, They drove off, leaving Miguel standing there, humiliated and heartbroken. He wanted to scream, to run after them, to throw something at their retreating car, but he held himself back. That night, he got drunk for the first time in his life, so drunk that he couldn't remember anything the next day. He did remember sitting in the kitchen with his father, who had tried to console him, telling him that there would be other girls, other loves. But Miguel had disagreed. He had truly loved Elizabeth, and no matter how much his father tried to convince him otherwise, the pain of losing her felt unbearable. As Anna continued to read, tears streamed down her face. She had never known about this part of Miguel's life, this deep, painful chapter that he had kept hidden away. The man she had married, the man she had loved, had carried this wound with him, silently, for all these years. It was a side of him she had never seen, a vulnerability he had never shown her. And now, as she held the diary in her trembling hands, Anna felt both closer to Miguel and more distant from him than ever before. The diary was filled with entries like these, each one revealing more about the inner life of the man she thought she knew so well. Anna wasn't sure how to process it all. The Miguel she had known was always strong, always composed, and always focused on their life together. But this diary revealed a man who had been deeply hurt, who had struggled with feelings of inadequacy and lost long before they had ever met. It was a lot to take in, and Anna wasn't sure what to do with the knowledge she had uncovered. For a long time, she sat there, the small key still in her hand, staring at the words that had changed her perception of her husband forever. She wondered if Miguel had ever intended for her to find this diary, or if it was something he had hoped to keep hidden, a secret he planned to take to his grave. But now that she knew, she couldn't ignore it. The diary was a part of Miguel, a part that had shaped who he was and the life they had shared. As she closed the notebook and placed it back in the drawer, Anna felt a strange mix of emotions: grief, love, confusion, and a deep, aching sadness. But there was also a sense of understanding, a realization that Miguel had been human, flawed, and vulnerable just like everyone else. And in that realization, Anna found a small measure of peace. She would carry this knowledge with her, but she wouldn't let it overshadow the love they had shared. With a heavy heart, Anna locked the drawer, placing the key in her pocket. She had discovered a hidden part of Miguel, but she knew that there was still so much more to their story, to her story. And as she stood up to leave the shed, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. Life, as Nina had said, didn't end with the loss of a loved one. It continued, and Anna was determined to find her way forward, carrying Miguel's memory with her, but also forging her path. As time passed, Miguel gradually distanced himself from any lingering thoughts of Elizabeth. They no longer crossed paths, and he made no effort to seek her out. She seemed to have moved on as well, and soon, word reached him that she had married Max, the wealthy man who had once humiliated him. The news cut deep, and Miguel resolved that he would never allow another woman to enter his heart as Elizabeth had. He built walls around his emotions, engaging in relationships that were light and fleeting, never letting anyone get too close. The women he chose were simple and uncomplicated, nothing like the tempestuous and captivating Elizabeth. After graduating from university, Miguel threw himself into his business, and over time, his efforts began to bear fruit. His professional life flourished, but his personal life remained stagnant, governed by the scars of his past. Then, one day, he met Anna. At first, Miguel didn't think much of her. She seemed like any other girl he had encountered, pleasant, but not particularly remarkable. He flirted with her casually, fully expecting that he would soon lose interest and move on. Anna didn't capture his attention immediately. She was, in his eyes, ordinary, a graduate of an art institute and a future librarian, not someone who would normally leave a lasting impression. But something shifted within Miguel as he spent more time with her. Anna wasn't a striking beauty like Elizabeth, but there was something about her that Miguel couldn't ignore. She had a quiet grace, a radiance that seemed to come from within. Her eyes, deep and blue, held a warmth and sincerity that he found himself drawn to, almost against his will. Still, he convinced himself that this wasn't love. How could it be when he had already experienced what he believed to be the only true love of his life? Then, one day, fate brought Elizabeth back into his life. She and her husband came into his auto parts store, and the encounter shook him more than he cared to admit. Her husband, of course, didn't recognize him, but Elizabeth's eyes flashed with a brief spark of recognition. She played it cool, acting as if she didn't know him. But when her husband was momentarily distracted by an item on the shelf, she turned to Miguel and asked quietly, "Do you live alone?" Her tone was condescending, and her smile was tinged with the same arrogance he remembered from years ago. Miguel's response came out before he could even think about it. "I'm getting married soon," he said, his voice steady. The words surprised even him. Why had he said that? Perhaps it was out of spite, a desperate attempt to show Elizabeth that he had moved on, that he was happy without her. In truth, he had no intention of marrying Anna at that point, but Elizabeth's reaction, or lack thereof, irritated him. She simply shrugged, as if it didn't matter to her either way. That night, driven by a mix of emotions he couldn't fully understand, Miguel proposed to Anna. God, how happy she was. Miguel later wrote in his diary, "She looked at me like I was a god, and I felt a little ashamed. I swore my love to her, but there was an emptiness inside me. I loved someone else at that time. Then, when I left the registry office with her, and later when I held her at night, everything changed." As his business began to face its first significant challenges, Anna's unwavering support was a revelation to Miguel. She was genuinely concerned for him, always by his side, offering comfort and encouragement. It was then that Miguel made his first real comparison. He wondered how Elizabeth would have reacted in such a situation. The answer was clear. Elizabeth would have left without a second thought, unwilling to face the hardships that Miguel now confronted. But Anna stayed, unafraid of poverty or the difficulties of rural life. She was ready to face anything as long as they were together. It was in the countryside, away from the hustle and bustle of the city, that Miguel finally understood the depth of his feelings for Anna. It was there that he truly saw her beauty, not just in her captivating eyes, but in her delicate skin, her thick brown hair, and her slender waist. Or had she become more beautiful to him over time? Whatever the case, Anna had become the center of his world. Anna was not only a loving wife but an excellent homemaker. She cooked delicious meals, kept their home cozy and welcoming, and never once complained, even during the toughest times. At night, Miguel held her with a tenderness he hadn't known he was capable of, and during the day, she worked tirelessly alongside him. Their life together was now secure and prosperous, their home a place of comfort and respect in the community. Miguel had become a respected man, and he knew it was largely because of Anna. He longed for children, and the fact that they hadn't been able to conceive weighed heavily on him. He knew that if Anna's infertility had been revealed earlier in their marriage, he might have considered leaving her. But now he couldn't imagine life without her. Anna had become the meaning of his existence. Then, 2 years ago, Miguel unexpectedly ran into Elizabeth again. He had gone to the city to pick up a new batch of spare parts when he saw her walking down the sidewalk. He recognized her instantly, even though time had dulled her once dazzling beauty. She looked tired, as though the years had taken a toll on her. Without really thinking, Miguel stopped, perhaps hoping that she would see him, see how well he was doing. He was driving an expensive car and dressed sharply. Everything about him spoke of success. Elizabeth recognized him, too, and though she had changed, the spark of recognition in her eyes told him she hadn't forgotten. As they spoke briefly, Miguel noticed the differences in her, how the years had softened her, taken away the sharp edges that had once defined her. She was no longer the woman he had idolized, no longer the girl who had broken his heart. As they exchanged a few pleasantries, Miguel felt something shift inside him. The hold Elizabeth had once had over him was gone. She no longer mattered in the way she once did. Returning home that day, Miguel felt a sense of closure he hadn't realized he needed. He looked at Anna, truly looked at her, and saw the life they had built together. It was then that he fully accepted that what he had with Anna was real, was love. It might not have started that way, but it had grown into something deep and unbreakable. Elizabeth was part of his past, but Anna was his present, his future, and, of course, did not know about these events. As she closed the diary, she was filled with a mixture of emotions: relief, sadness, and a strange sense of peace. Miguel had loved her, truly loved her, and whatever doubts or comparisons he had once made were buried in the past. Their life together had been built on real love, even if it had taken Miguel time to realize it. And now, it was her turn to find her way forward, to honor the love they had shared and continue the life they had built together. As Anna read through the pages of Miguel's diary, she felt a growing sense of dread and disbelief. The further she delved into his account, the more she realized how much of his past and even his recent actions had been hidden from her. The story she uncovered painted a picture of a man tormented by his past, making decisions driven by guilt, fear, and desperation. The diary continued with the recounting of his unexpected encounter with Elizabeth. Miguel had been driving when he saw her walking alone, and on impulse, he offered her a ride. As they sat in the car, Elizabeth revealed the depths of her misfortune. Her husband had left her. She was financially ruined, and she hadn't finished university. Now she was working as a cashier, barely getting by. "And you?" Elizabeth asked, her voice filled with the timidity of someone who once had everything and now had nothing. "I'm doing very well," Miguel replied, his voice laced with a smile that masked the turmoil he felt inside. "Are you married?" she asked, almost afraid of the answer. "Yes, of course," Miguel responded. "Do you have children?" "Not yet," he said, keeping his answer short, not wanting to delve deeper into that painful topic. Elizabeth fell silent, and then, to Miguel's surprise, she began to cry. He was taken aback, stopping the car to try to console her, but the situation quickly escalated. The next thing he knew, they were in a cheap hotel room, and the lines between past and present blurred in a haze of regret and misplaced comfort. When Miguel realized the gravity of what he had done, shame and panic overtook him. He quickly dressed, telling Elizabeth she could stay in the room. It was paid for the night. But as she stretched out on the bed, looking content and almost as beautiful as she once had, Miguel couldn't bring himself to meet her gaze. The weight of his betrayal crushed him. He had been unfaithful to the one person who had stood by him through everything, Anna. "I need to go home," Miguel said, avoiding Elizabeth's eyes as he prepared to leave. "Will we see each other again?" she asked, her voice soft as if clinging to the remnants of the past. "No. Forget everything that happened here," Miguel replied, his voice firm. "How can you treat me like this? You always loved only me," Elizabeth shouted, her tone turning from vulnerable to accusatory. "That was a long time ago, and what happened today was a mistake. I only love my wife. Forgive me?" Miguel said, leaving the room without looking back, leaving Elizabeth in tears. He felt a pang of pity for her. Yes, but the overwhelming emotion was one of shame. Shame for his actions. Shame for betraying Anna, the woman he truly loved. Miguel tried to bury the incident, to forget it ever happened, but Elizabeth didn't let it go. Not long after, she found a way to contact him. "Hello," she said when he picked up the phone. "I'm pregnant." "Congratulations," Miguel replied coldly. "But what does that have to do with me?" "It's your child, of course," Elizabeth said. Miguel didn't believe her at first. He demanded that she stop calling him, but Elizabeth was relentless. The next day, she sent him a message threatening to tell everything to Anna. That was when Miguel lost his temper. He called her back, his voice shaking with anger. "Don't you dare contact my wife," he shouted into the phone. "I don't know if you're pregnant with my child or not. What happened between us was a mistake, as I told you. I don't want a child from you, even if it is mine." After the call, Miguel regretted his harsh words slightly. The thought that Elizabeth might be telling the truth gnawed at him, especially considering that he and Anna couldn't have children of their own. But he couldn't bear the thought of Anna finding out about his betrayal. He loved her too much to hurt her that way. In his desperation, Miguel devised a plan to ensure Elizabeth wouldn't reach Anna. That night, He discreetly took Anna's phone and drowned it in the lake, making it look like an accident. The next day, he bought her a new phone with a new SIM card, hoping that this would sever any possible connection between Elizabeth and Anna. The plan seemed to work. Elizabeth didn't contact Anna again. Months later, Elizabeth called Miguel once more. "I had the baby," she said, her tone matter-of-fact. "I couldn't bring myself to have an abortion," she explained, laughing bitterly. "I still want a family and children in the future, but let this child fend for himself." "So, are you going to leave him to fight alone?" Miguel was horrified. "What did you do with the child?" he demanded. "I left him in an orphanage," Elizabeth replied casually. "He turned out to be sick. If he had been healthy, I might have kept him. But there's not much joy in ruining your life with a sick child. So, goodbye." Miguel was stunned into silence, his heart pounding with disbelief and guilt. "Which orphanage?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Elizabeth didn't answer. She simply laughed and hung up. That night, Miguel couldn't sleep. His mind was consumed with thoughts of the child he might never know, the child he had abandoned. He had set up an office in the barn, a place where he could retreat to think, to try and make sense of his actions and what to do next. But no matter how much he tried to focus on his gardening studies, his mind kept returning to the same tormenting question. What should he do now? Should he confess everything to Anna? Could he find the child and make amends somehow? Miguel's diary ended abruptly there, leaving Anna with a million questions and a heart heavy with sorrow. The man she had loved had carried this secret burden for so long, hiding it from her, even as they built their life together. The betrayal stung deeply, but so did the realization of the pain Miguel must have been in, trapped by his mistakes and unable to find a way out. As Anna sat in the barn, the small key still clutched in her hand, she felt a profound sadness wash over her. The man she thought she knew so well had been struggling with demons she hadn't even known existed. She didn't know how she would move forward with this knowledge, but she knew that she couldn't just let it fester. There were too many lives at stake and too many unanswered questions. The first step, she decided, was to find out what had happened to the child. That innocent life, abandoned and forgotten, needed to be found. And then, maybe, she could start to make sense of the pieces of her shattered world. Anna sat in stunned silence after reading the final pages of Miguel's diary. Her heart ached with the weight of the secrets her husband had carried, the pain he had endured alone, and the burden he had taken to his grave. The knowledge of Felipe, a child Miguel had desperately tried to save without ever revealing his existence to her, shattered her. It was clear now that Miguel had loved her deeply, perhaps more than she had ever realized. But his guilt and shame had prevented him from sharing his struggles with her. He had tried to protect her, but in doing so, he had isolated himself, ultimately leading to his demise. Anna couldn't stop the tears from flowing as she reread the last lines of the diary. "I felt somewhat unwell today, like a sharp pain in my heart. When I imagine that my Felipe could feel the same, it tears me apart inside. I'm an adult man, but he is just a little one. Well, I found a foundation that might help my boy, and I will find a way to convince Anna to accept him. Yes, my wife won't know he's mine right away. Maybe someday I'll confess it, but not now." The realization that Miguel had been on the brink of confessing everything to her, that he had wanted to find a way to bring Felipe into their lives, broke her heart even further. Why hadn't he trusted her? Why hadn't he believed that she was strong enough to handle the truth? Anna felt no anger towards him, only deep sorrow for the torment he had gone through alone. Felipe, the little boy with the sick heart, was Miguel's son, and by extension, he was now part of Anna's family too. She couldn't abandon him. She had to save him. That night, Anna dreamed of cradling a baby again. But this time, she knew the child's name, Felipe, and she could see his face. In the dream, the boy resembled Miguel, with the same eyes that had once looked at her with so much love. When she woke in the morning, her course of action was clear. She washed, dressed quickly, and without hesitation headed to the city. She knew from Miguel's diary where Felipe was, and she was determined to bring him home. Upon arriving at the orphanage, Anna was directed to the office of the director, Laura. When Anna introduced herself, Laura looked at her with a mixture of surprise and concern. "Are you Miguel's wife?" Laura asked somewhat incredulously. "Yes, I am," Anna replied softly. "But he's gone now. I'm his widow." Laura's eyes widened in shock. "Oh my God!" she gasped, clasping her hands together. "What a tragedy! What happened?" Anna explained the situation as best she could, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "It seems to be hereditary," Laura said cautiously, sensing Anna's grief. "I know that my late husband's son is in this orphanage. I'm not his mother, but I want to help him. Can you tell me what needs to be done?" Laura nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "So, you want to pay for the second surgery? I know Miguel intended to, but the amount is enormous. Have you found the money?" "Not yet," Anna admitted, her voice tinged with determination. "I don't know all the details. My husband didn't tell me anything, but I want to finish what he started. The child is innocent and shouldn't suffer." "You're right," Laura agreed, her tone softening. "I'll tell you everything I know." Laura explained that Miguel had found a foundation willing to contribute part of the money needed for Felipe's surgery, but the total amount was still far from being covered. She provided Anna with the contact details for the foundation and the steps Miguel had taken so far. Then, almost hesitantly, Laura asked, "Would you like to see the boy?" Anna hesitated only for a moment before nodding. "I would," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Laura led Anna through the quiet halls of the orphanage to a small room where Felipe was resting. As they approached the room, Anna's heart pounded in her chest, a mix of anticipation and fear swirling within her. When they entered, she saw him. A small, fragile-looking child with large, soulful eyes that instantly reminded her of Miguel. Felipe was lying in a crib, his tiny chest rising and falling with each labored breath. Anna felt an overwhelming rush of emotion. This was her husband's son, and now he was hers too. She walked over to the crib and gently reached out to stroke Felipe's soft hair. The boy looked up at her with curious eyes, and for a moment, they just stared at each other, a silent understanding passing between them. Anna knew in that instant that she couldn't let him go. This child, born of a mistake but innocent of it all, needed her, and she needed him. As she held his tiny hand, Anna made a silent promise to Miguel. She would do everything in her power to save Felipe, to give him the life that Miguel had wanted for him. Whatever it took, she would find a way to get the money for his surgery, to bring him home where he belonged. Anna's resolve hardened. She wasn't just doing this for Felipe. She was doing it for Miguel, for the love they had shared, and for the future that still lay ahead. With a heavy but determined heart, Anna left the orphanage that day, her mind already racing with plans. She would contact the foundation, raise the money, and bring Felipe home. She didn't know how yet, but she knew she wouldn't stop until it was done. Miguel's secret had become her mission, and she would see it through to the end. "Is it possible?" Anna asked, her voice trembling with hope and fear as she stood beside Felipe's crib. "Normally, it's not allowed," Laura replied gently, "but I think we can make an exception." Soon, Anna found herself standing over the crib of the small boy who had unknowingly become the center of her world. Felipe was asleep, his tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. Anna's heart tightened as she gazed at him. This child, so innocent and fragile, seemed like he had stepped straight out of her dreams. As if sensing her presence, Felipe stirred, his eyelids fluttering open, revealing those familiar eyes, Miguel's eyes. He let out a small whimper, and once again, Anna felt an overwhelming connection to him. It was as if the universe had destined them to find each other. A nurse quietly approached to tend to Felipe, and Anna, her heart heavy with emotion, followed Laura towards the exit. As they reached the door, Anna turned to Laura, her voice firm despite the turmoil inside her. "I'll find a way to help Felipe," she promised. Leaving the orphanage, Anna headed straight to her parents' house. She knew she couldn't do this alone, and she needed their support. She didn't hold back as she told them everything, about Felipe, about the foundation, and about her plan to adopt the boy, even if it meant selling the farm. The most important thing, she explained, was that she wanted to give Felipe a home and the love he deserved. Her mother was horrified. "You've completely lost your mind," she exclaimed, her voice sharp with disbelief. "This is not your child, and you've decided to sacrifice everything for him? How will you survive on a librarian's salary? Remember, you've already lost your place in the village, and you still haven't found one in the city. You insisted I move to the city after Miguel's death," Ana reminded her mother calmly. "I did, but not with someone else's child. This child is Miguel's, conceived in infidelity, a betrayal to you." "Mom, I know all that," Ana replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "But he regretted everything, and you know how much I wanted a child. This child may not be mine by birth, but he's still part of someone I loved deeply. Miguel isn't here to help now, but that doesn't mean I can't do this. How will you manage alone with a child and no money?" her mother pressed, her voice filled with concern and frustration. "I'll figure it out," Ana insisted. Her mother threw her hands up in exasperation and called out to Anna's father. "Come here, you need to talk some sense into her. She's making a huge mistake." But when her father entered the room, he surprised them both with his response. "She's doing the right thing," he said, his voice calm and supportive. "I liked Miguel. People make mistakes. Who doesn't? And women like Elizabeth don't inspire jealousy. They inspire disdain. So, daughter, do what you think is right. Your mother and I will support you." Anna's mother sighed heavily at her husband's response but didn't argue further. Perhaps deep down, she knew there was no changing Anna's mind once it was set. And maybe, just maybe, she realized that this was the right decision after all. From her parents' house, Ana went to visit Miguel's parents. They were surprised to see her standing at their door, but quickly ushered her in, eager to prepare something for her. However, Ana stopped them, her expression serious. "You don't need to do anything," she said gently. "I have something serious to discuss with you." Miguel's parents exchanged worried glances, and his mother spoke first. "What is it, Ana? Did you know that Miguel had another child?" Ana asked, her voice steady despite the emotional weight of the question. His mother looked puzzled. "Where did you get that from? I've never heard of that." Ana took a deep breath and told them about Elizabeth and Felipe. She explained everything she had learned, including her plans to adopt the boy and give him the care he needed. Miguel's parents listened in stunned silence, their faces pale with the weight of this new information. Finally, they admitted that they had known about Felipe before Miguel's marriage but had chosen to keep it a secret, as it had been a deeply painful chapter in Miguel's life. "So, this Elizabeth has interfered in his life again," Miguel's father grumbled, his voice thick with anger. "What a curse!" But Miguel's mother was more composed, her eyes filled with sadness as she looked at Ana. "Ana, you're doing the right thing," she said softly. "Thank you for telling us about our grandson. Now we have reasons to keep going. Let's save the boy together. Don't hesitate for a moment." That night, Ana stayed at her late husband's parents' house. She felt a sense of peace knowing they were all united in this decision. The next morning, she went to the hospital to learn more about Felipe's condition. The doctor, who had been caring for Felipe, explained the gravity of the situation. "The boy needs another surgery," the doctor said, his tone serious. "We have a maximum of 3 months before he starts crawling and walking actively. After that, the strain on his heart will increase, and the outcome could be fatal." "Can't this surgery be performed under the public health system?" Ana asked, even though she already knew the answer. The doctor shook his head. "The procedure is too specialized and expensive. It requires expertise and equipment that only a few private facilities can provide. The public system can't cover it." Ana nodded, absorbing the information. The reality of the situation was grim, but she was more determined than ever. "I'll find a way," she said quietly, more to herself than to the doctor. "I'll get the money, and we'll save him." Leaving the hospital, Ana felt a mixture of fear and resolve. The road ahead would be difficult, but she wasn't alone. She had the support of both her and Miguel's families, and she was determined to honor Miguel's memory by saving his son. As she stepped out into the sunlight, she felt the weight of the responsibility on her shoulders, but she also felt a sense of purpose. Felipe was her son now, and she would do whatever it took to give him the life he deserved. Yes, the doctor confirmed. There is a quota, but Felipe would never get it in the regular queue. Ana felt her heart sink at those words. The urgency of Felipe's condition loomed over her like a dark cloud. Are you related to the boy? The doctor asked, though Ana knew he wasn't supposed to disclose such information to just anyone. Not yet, Ana replied, her voice firm. But I hope that's temporary. The doctor looked at her with a mix of curiosity and concern. What do you mean? I want to adopt Felipe, Ana said, her determination clear in her voice. I understand that he will be a difficult child to care for, and it seems like this expensive surgery won't be the last. The doctor nodded, understanding the weight of what she was saying. I understand all of that, he said quietly. From the hospital, Ana drove straight to the foundation she had hoped would help cover the costs of Felipe's surgery. However, the woman at the foundation informed her that the sum was too large and the waiting list was immense. Every child needed urgent assistance, and there simply wasn't enough money to go around. Feeling utterly defeated, Ana returned to the village in the afternoon. When she arrived at Carlos' house, he had just come back from the fields. Seeing Ana's weary expression, Carlos frowned, sensing that something was wrong. Carlos, I'll have to sell the farm, Ana said with a sigh, her voice tinged with exhaustion. She then proceeded to tell the farm manager everything, about Felipe, about the desperate need for funds, and about her plan to sell everything if it meant saving Miguel's son. Carlos listened, shaking his head slowly as he absorbed the gravity of the situation. Yes, you're right, Ana admitted, feeling completely lost. This is Miguel's son. How can I abandon him? He's so little. Carlos thought for a moment, his brow furrowed in deep concentration. If we had time, we could wait until late autumn and sell the harvest at a higher price to intermediaries. But almost everything is already gone. And what about seeds for the next season? How will we feed the livestock during the winter, sacrificing the entire dairy herd? Can we do that? He paused, looking at Ana with concern. Ana, are you sure this child is Miguel's? He asked cautiously. Absolutely. I found a certificate from a genetic lab among his documents. Incredible, Carlos murmured, reaching out to comfort Ana with a hug and a gentle pat on the shoulder. This hurts. I see you're trying, learning, and holding on. But in the end, this is still a child born as a result of your husband's betrayal. No, it's not jealousy. It's just painful. I know, Ana confessed, her voice breaking. I'm struggling with it. I go through his things, and yet, deep down, I know he's just a child, Miguel's child. How can I abandon him? Carlos looked at her with empathy. Don't worry too much, dear. Your heart will find peace. You're doing the right thing by rushing to help that little one. Don't worry too much, girl. We'll figure something out. Maybe we can even save the farm. Carlos wasn't just offering empty comfort. Soon, word spread throughout the area about Miguel's sick child, and the local farmers rallied to help. They organized fundraisers, reaching out to their contacts and acquaintances, and slowly the money began to accumulate. Ana, who was constantly torn between managing the farm, making trips to the hospital, and worrying about Felipe, grew more exhausted by the day. But she was deeply grateful to the people who were helping her. Still, it was only a drop in the ocean compared to what was needed. Miguel's parents didn't stay on the sidelines either. They even took out a loan to contribute to their grandson's surgery. But despite all the efforts, the amount was still far from enough. Then, one day, Ana's mother, Amanda, arrived unexpectedly in the village. At first, Amanda had been skeptical about Ana's decision, but as she saw her daughter's determination and heard about the collective efforts to save Felipe, she realized that she couldn't just stand by. She arrived at the end of September, just as Ana was returning from another exhausting day of work. "Mom!" Ana exclaimed in surprise when she saw her mother standing by the door. Then she paled. "Did something happen to Dad?" No, your father is fine, Amanda reassured her, shaking her head. I'm here to help. I'm sorry for not accepting this situation at first. You know I have a difficult personality. I wouldn't have forgiven the betrayal. But you're different. I see you're fighting for this little one. Relatives called me, telling me they'd seen the child. He looks like Miguel. And indeed, the child is innocent. Mama, what are all these words for? Anna responded, slightly irritated. She was exhausted after a long day of work and calls from the clinic, and now her mother had arrived, probably ready to lecture her once again. What is all this for? Amanda sighed, her expression softening with understanding. She opened a small bag she had brought with her and took out an old jewelry box that Anna had never seen before. Placing it on the table, Amanda opened the box, revealing its contents. Anna's eyes widened in surprise as she saw the collection of old jewelry. Rings, bracelets, and earrings, all glimmering in the light. Is this gold? Anna asked, her voice filled with disbelief. Gold? Amanda confirmed with a sad smile. And the earrings have real emeralds. Mom, where did all this come from? We've always lived modestly. You're just a schoolteacher. And Dad worked at the factory all his life. And as far as I remember, our grandparents were simple workers. Amanda sighed again, this time with a hint of nostalgia. This jewelry has been in our family for generations, passed down from mother to daughter. I never spoke of it because it didn't seem necessary, and besides, we lived simply. But I've kept it all these years, and now it's time to use it for something truly important. Anna's eyes filled with tears as she looked at the jewelry, understanding the depth of her mother's gesture. Mom, are you sure? This is your legacy. No, Anna, Amanda said firmly. This is our legacy, and now it's meant for you and Felipe. Sell it and use the money to help the boy. It's not enough, but it's a start. And it's my way of supporting you, of supporting this child who has become part of our family. Anna threw her arms around her mother, her tears flowing freely now. Thank you, Mom, she whispered, overwhelmed by her mother's love and sacrifice. Amanda hugged her daughter tightly. We'll find a way to get through this, Anna. Together, we'll save Felipe. With the jewelry as a significant contribution, Anna felt a renewed sense of hope. It was still going to be an uphill battle, but she wasn't alone. Her family, the community, and the memory of Miguel were all with her. She would do whatever it took to save Felipe, to give him the life he deserved. And with her mother by her side, she knew they would find a way. As Amanda finished telling the story of the jewelry, Anna sat in silence, absorbing the weight of the tale. The history of the jewels, their mysterious past, and the sense of responsibility her ancestors had felt toward them all swirled in her mind. It was a lot to take in, but one thing was clear. The jewelry could be the key to saving Felipe, Miguel's son. Amanda looked at her daughter with a mixture of hope and concern. To be honest, Mom, you surprised me, Anna finally said, shaking her head. I don't believe in curses, and these jewels could help save Felipe. But how do we use them? We need to find someone trustworthy. Amanda nodded, understanding her daughter's caution. I'm thinking the same, dear. We need to find someone trustworthy. Do you have someone in mind? Anna sighed and shrugged. She didn't know many people who could handle such a delicate matter. Most of the people in the village were simple, hard-working folks, and she doubted they had connections to someone who could discreetly appraise and sell such valuable items. However, one name did come to mind, Carlos. He had always been a loyal helper and friend to Miguel, and Anna trusted him implicitly. He might not have direct experience in dealing with such valuables, but he was resourceful and had the village's best interests at heart. I think Carlos might be able to help, Anna said after a moment of thought. He's been a good friend to us and has always been reliable. Maybe he can find someone who can discreetly appraise and sell the jewelry. Amanda seemed to consider this, then nodded. It's worth a try. Just be careful, Anna. These jewels have a complicated history, and while I don't believe in curses either, we must be cautious. Make sure whoever you deal with is trustworthy. The next morning, after seeing her mother off at the bus stop, Anna made her way to the office. She felt a mixture of anxiety and determination as she walked through the familiar streets of the village. When she arrived, she found Carlos in a heated discussion with the accountant in his office. They were talking about the farm's finances, the dwindling resources, and the challenges they were facing as winter approached. Carlos looked up as Anna entered the room, his expression softening when he saw her. "Anna, good morning," he said, though the weariness in his voice was evident. "We were just discussing some of the challenges we're facing with the farm. It's been a tough season." "I can imagine," Anna replied, glancing at the accountant, who nodded in agreement. "Carlos, I need to talk to you about something important. It's about Felipe and, well, something that might help us save him." Carlos raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Of course, Anna. What is it?" Anna took a deep breath and began to recount the story her mother had told her the previous night. She explained the history of the jewelry, the superstitions surrounding it, and her mother's decision to finally unearth the box in the hopes that it could be used to help Felipe. Carlos listened intently, his expression growing more serious as Anna continued. When she finished, Carlos leaned back in his chair, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "That's quite a story, Anna," he said after a moment. "And these jewels, they could be worth a significant amount, enough to cover Felipe's surgery?" "I believe so," Anna replied. "But we need someone who can appraise them and sell them discreetly. I don't want to draw too much attention to this." Carlos nodded slowly. "I understand. Discretion is key, especially given the history of these jewels. I might know someone who can help. He's an old friend from my army days, and now he works in a reputable jewelry shop in the city. He's honest and trustworthy. If anyone can appraise these jewels and handle their sale quietly, it's him." Relief washed over Anna. "Thank you, Carlos. That would be a huge help. I'll reach out to him today," Carlos promised. "In the meantime, keep the jewels safe. We don't want any rumors or gossip spreading about them. This village, well, you know how quickly stories can get out of hand." Anna nodded, fully aware of the close-knit nature of the village and how quickly news could spread. "I'll keep them hidden until we can arrange everything." With a plan in place, Anna felt a renewed sense of hope. It wasn't going to be easy, but she was determined to do everything in her power to save Felipe. With Carlos's help, she believed they could turn the jewelry into the lifeline they so desperately needed. As Anna left the office that day, she knew the journey ahead would be filled with challenges, but she also knew she wasn't alone. She had the support of her family, the village, and now a way forward. The legacy of the past was no longer a burden. It was a beacon of hope for the future, for Felipe, and for the life Anna was determined to build for him. "Hello?" Anna greeted warmly as she stepped into the room. "Hello," Carlos replied, giving her an inquisitive look. "We need to talk. Come to my office." The manager obediently followed Anna, sensing the seriousness in her tone. Once inside her office, Anna took a deep breath and began sharing her family's secret, the history of the hidden treasure, and explained her need for his help in selling the jewelry. "It should be enough for Felipe's treatment and to settle all our debts," she concluded, her eyes filled with a mix of hope and anxiety. "Can you help us, Carlos? We need to find the right person." Carlos listened intently, nodding as she spoke. "I'll help you, Anna," he promised. True to his word, within a couple of days, Carlos informed Anna that he had found someone trustworthy who could assist with the sale. Together, they traveled to the city to meet with a reputable jeweler. The jeweler examined the contents of the box and, understanding the urgency and sensitivity of the situation, agreed to help them discreetly. 2 days later, Anna received a substantial sum of money. It was more than enough to cover Felipe's surgery and ensure the farm's financial stability. The jeweler had mentioned that a very wealthy individual had purchased the jewels, but Anna didn't dwell on the details. Her focus was solely on saving Felipe, and the buyer's identity was of little concern to her. All that mattered was that the money was now in her hands, ready to be used for her son's future. The operation took place in one of the city's best clinics, and Felipe, though fragile, recovered quickly. The surgery was a success, and by New Year's, Anna was able to bring Felipe home legally, adopting him as her son. The child protection authorities had suggested she obtain legal guardianship to receive financial benefits, but Anna firmly believed that Felipe was her son in every sense of the word. She was determined to raise him without relying on government support, confident in her ability to provide for him on her own. 3 years passed, and Anna's life in the countryside with Felipe blossomed. During this time, Anna became proficient in managing the farm and handling its affairs with confidence and skill. Carlos remained her steadfast assistant, always by her side, ensuring that the farm prospered. The workers respected her, and the farm's success was a testament to her hard work and determination. Anna knew that Miguel would be proud of her, proud of the life she had built and the way she had embraced their son. Felipe, now a bright and lively child, attended kindergarten and thrived in the loving environment Anna had created for him. He was always the most active and artistic during morning gatherings, enthusiastically reciting poetry and singing songs. Anna cherished every moment with him, her heart swelling with pride whenever he achieved something new. Felipe, in turn, adored his mother, often picking flowers from the garden to present to her, even though it meant scraped knees and elbows from chasing butterflies. Despite the minor injuries, Anna never scolded him. Instead, she tended to his scrapes with gentle care, blowing softly on the wounds as he winced, determined to be brave. "When you see a beautiful butterfly, just call me, and we'll admire it together," she would say, and Felipe would nod seriously. He understood that while he might not catch the elusive butterflies, sharing the moment with his mom was what truly made her happy. Together, they would chase butterflies, and Anna would exclaim in admiration, whether it was a simple white cabbage butterfly or a common moth. Felipe's smile would light up his face, knowing he had brought joy to his mother. Felipe grew up surrounded by love and care. Miguel's parents frequently visited to spend time with their grandson, and Anna's parents also made occasional visits. The little boy was showered with attention and affection, his every need met by those who adored him. However, there was one question that Felipe occasionally asked, his innocent curiosity tugging at Anna's heart. "Where is my dad?" Felipe would ask, his wide eyes searching her face for answers. "Our dad is in heaven," Anna would sigh, pulling her son into a tight embrace. Felipe would look up at the sky, trying to understand where his dad might be hiding and why he couldn't be there with them. After all, other children had their dads nearby. This was the only shadow in Felipe's otherwise sunny world. "Don't be sad, little one," Anna would reassure him, brushing away his concerns with a soft kiss on his forehead. "I'm here," and Felipe, with the innocence of a child who felt completely loved, would hug her tightly around the neck. "Mom, I love you so much," he would whisper in her ear, and Anna's heart would swell with happiness. In those moments, she felt like the luckiest woman in the world. Being a mother was the most important thing to her, and Felipe had brought joy into her life that she had never imagined possible. Often, after putting Felipe to bed, Anna would sit by the window and gaze at the stars, lost in memories of her past life with Miguel. They had shared so many happy moments, and the ache of his absence still lingered in her heart. Yet, as she watched Felipe grow and thrive, she knew that his presence in her life had healed many of those wounds. Felipe had saved her from the despair that might have consumed her after Miguel's death. On one hand, Anna knew she should have been angry with Miguel for what some would call a betrayal. But on the other hand, was it truly a betrayal? Anna couldn't find it in her heart to condemn him. Instead, she felt grateful that Miguel's mistake had allowed her to become a mother, even if it had happened unconventionally. She was even thankful to Elizabeth, despite everything, for leaving Felipe at the orphanage, because otherwise, she would never have met the child who had become her entire world. Felipe was her dearest, her most beloved, her everything, and every time he smiled up at her, his eyes sparkling with life, Anna knew she had made the right choice. She had chosen love, and that love had filled her life with meaning and purpose beyond anything she had ever known. The first snow had fallen early in mid-November, blanketing the countryside in a pristine layer of white. Anna had woken up early that morning, the quiet stillness outside hinting at the snow that had arrived overnight. She busied herself in the kitchen, preparing dough for pies, letting the warmth of the oven fill the house with the comforting aroma of baking apples. When Felipe finally woke up, his small footsteps padded softly on the floor as he made his way to the kitchen, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Pies?" he asked, his face lighting up as he peeked inside. "Pies," Anna confirmed with a smile, pulling a tray of golden, fluffy apple pies from the oven. "Your favorites. Go wash up and sit at the table." Felipe didn't need to be told twice. He dashed to the bathroom, eager to start his day. Soon, Anna could hear his little feet pattering back toward the kitchen. When he appeared, freshly washed and hair slightly damp, she frowned playfully. "Why are you walking barefoot on the cold floor? Who's going to cough now?" "Not me," Felipe declared confidently, climbing onto a stool, his excitement barely contained. Then, with a hopeful tone, he added, "Mom, can we go outside after breakfast? There's snow." Anna kept her expression serious, though she was smiling inside. "Yes, winter has come," she replied, pretending to deliberate. "But you want to." "Oh, Mom," Felipe pouted adorably. "I want to build a snowman." "All right, we'll build one," Anna agreed, unable to resist his enthusiasm. "But first, we need to eat our pies." Felipe's face broke into a wide smile, and he began to swing his bare feet back and forth on the stool, eager for the day ahead. Anna sighed, fetched a pair of slippers for him, and slipped them onto his feet before kissing his forehead. They enjoyed breakfast together, the warmth of the kitchen contrasting with the cold, snowy world outside. After breakfast, Anna and Felipe bundled up in their warmest clothes and headed outside. The backyard was a winter wonderland, with fluffy snowflakes gently covering the trees, fences, and buildings. It was as if everything had been wrapped in a soft, white blanket. The snow on the ground was perfect for playing, soft, and easy to mold. Together, they built snowmen, their laughter ringing through the crisp air as they occasionally threw snowballs at each other. Felipe's giggles were contagious, and Anna found herself caught up in the joy of the moment, forgetting all her worries. Unbeknownst to them, a dark foreign car had parked near their house. A man, likely in his mid-30s, stepped out and watched them for a few moments, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth as he observed their playful interaction. Finally, he opened the car door, and the sound of the latch clicking caught Anna's attention. She turned her head, surprised to see a stranger approaching. "Excuse me, are you Anna?" the man asked uncertainly, his voice polite but cautious. "Yes, and you are," Anna responded, her tone wary as she looked him over. "Who are you? How should I say it?" The man hesitated. An heir. An heir," Anna repeated, taken aback. "What do you inherit from my house?" No, he stammered quickly, shaking his head. "You misunderstood. I didn't come to talk about inheriting your house. I came to talk to you about the jewels." At the mention of the jewels, Anna felt a cold shiver run down her spine. She paled slightly, instinctively ready to deny everything. But the man spoke again before she could. No, please don't think I have any claims against you," he said, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "I just want to know. But first, let me introduce myself. I'm Christopher, the great-grandson of the merchant." Anna's heart skipped a beat. She had heard of the merchant, the very man whose wife's jewels had been sold years ago. The mention of his name made her pale even more, and the man, noticing her reaction, hurried to explain. Christopher began to recount his family's history. He had been born and raised in the capital, where his parents had told him the story of his great-grandfather, a merchant who had lived in a small village and had been forced to flee with his family to escape the turmoil of the new regime. The merchant had hoped to use his wife's jewels to secure their escape, but in the chaos, they had lost the jewels and were left penniless. Christopher's great-grandfather had taken his family into hiding in Siberia, living in the forest and avoiding the authorities. Despite their efforts, they were eventually found. By that time, the great-grandfather had fallen gravely ill and soon passed away. The authorities, surprisingly, did not pursue the widow and instead offered her work on a collective farm. Over time, her children also worked on the farm, and the family eventually proved their reliability through hard work. As Christopher grew up, his father managed to move to the capital, where he established a family of his own. Christopher knew little of his ancestors, aside from vague legends about the lost jewels. He pursued a career in history and eventually became a professor at a prestigious university. Then, one day, an unusual incident occurred during an exam. A student, unable to answer even the simplest question, burst into tears and, in desperation, removed her earrings and placed them on the desk in front of him. "These are rare earrings," she sobbed. "Please take them, but pass me." Something about the earrings sparked Christopher's memory. Curious, he asked the student where she had gotten them. After calming down, the girl explained that her father had purchased them at an auction for a high price. Intrigued, Christopher asked for her father's contact information, gave the girl the passing grade she wanted, and took possession of the earrings. "Don't give away such valuable gifts so easily," he advised her as she left. Driven by curiosity, Christopher contacted the student's father and inquired about the auction. This led him to visit the jeweler who had sold the earrings, and gradually, he pieced together the story. Eventually, his search led him to Anna. "I had to find you," Christopher said, his voice sincere, "not to make any claims, but to learn the truth and to understand what happened to my family's legacy." Anna listened to her emotions in turmoil. She had never imagined that the jewels would one day bring someone to her door, let alone a descendant of the original owners. She didn't know what to say, feeling both guilt and relief that Christopher wasn't there to reclaim anything. "Thank you for telling me your story," Anna finally said, her voice trembling slightly. "I never expected that the jewels would resurface like this. I sold them to save a life, to save my son." Christopher nodded, understanding the depth of her decision. "I'm glad they could be used for something good," he said, "and I'm glad I found you, even if it's just to close this chapter of my family's history." Anna felt a sense of closure as they stood there in the snow, their shared histories intertwining in a way neither had expected. They spoke for a while longer, and by the end of the conversation, Anna felt a strange sense of peace. The jewels, once a burden, had served their purpose. They had saved Felipe, and now their story had come full circle. As Christopher left, Anna watched him drive away, feeling the weight of the past lift from her shoulders. She turned back to Felipe, who was busy rolling another ball of snow, completely unaware of the significance of the encounter. Anna smiled, her heart full of gratitude for the life she now had, for the son she had saved, and for the peace she had finally found. The past had been reconciled, and the future was hers to shape, one snow-filled day at a time. Anna felt a wave of tension rise as Elizabeth sat before her. This woman who had once been part of Miguel's life, now suddenly reappearing and making demands. She remained calm, though her heart raced with anxiety. "Elizabeth," Anna began, her voice steady, "you abandoned Felipe when he was just a baby. You left him in an orphanage, knowing he was ill and needed care. I was the one who found him, who loved him, and who fought to save his life. Where were you all those years?" Elizabeth narrowed her eyes, her tone defensive. "I had no choice. I didn't have the money or the resources to take care of a sick child. Do you think it was easy for me? I did what I thought was best at the time." Anna felt a surge of anger but kept it under control. "And now, after all this time, after everything I've done for him, you want to take him away? What makes you think you have the right to do that?" "I'm his mother," Elizabeth retorted, her voice cold and sharp. "I gave birth to him, and that gives me the right. I've come to reclaim what's mine." Anna shook her head, disbelief and anger mingling in her expression. "Felipe isn't a possession to be reclaimed, Elizabeth. He's a little boy who needs stability, love, and care. I've given him all of that. He doesn't even know who you are. How can you expect to just walk back into his life and take him away?" Elizabeth leaned forward, her gaze piercing. "I don't care what you think you've done for him. The fact is, I'm his mother, and I can prove it in court. They'll listen to me." Anna took a deep breath, her mind racing to find the right words. Elizabeth, if you truly cared about Felipe, you wouldn't be here to disrupt his life like this. You would see that he's happy and thriving, and you'd leave him in peace. But if you want to go to court, then do it. I'll fight for him with everything I have." For a moment, the two women stared at each other in silence, the tension thick in the air. Finally, Elizabeth broke the silence, her tone slightly softer but no less determined. "I didn't come here to argue. I came here to take what's mine. But I see that you're not going to make this easy." "No, I won't," Anna replied firmly, "because Felipe is my son, not yours. You might have given birth to him, but I'm the one who's raised him, who's been there for him every day. I'm the one he calls Mom." Elizabeth stood up, her expression unreadable. "We'll see about that," she said curtly. "But don't think for a second that this is over. I'll do whatever it takes to get him back." With that, Elizabeth turned and walked away, leaving Anna standing in the garden, her heart pounding in her chest. She watched as the tall, slender figure disappeared down the path, and the sound of the taxi's engine revving up and driving away echoed in her ears. Anna stood there for a long moment, processing everything that had just happened. The encounter had shaken her, but it also solidified her resolve. She knew now, more than ever, that she would do whatever it took to protect Felipe from this woman, no matter what. After a moment, she walked back into the house where Felipe was still playing with his toy cars, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just outside his world. Anna knelt beside him, running a hand through his soft hair, and kissed the top of his head. "We'll go to the lake tomorrow, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Mommy needs to take care of a few things today." Felipe looked up at her with wide, trusting eyes and nodded, returning to his play without a care in the world. Anna watched him for a moment, her heart heavy but her resolve strong. She would protect him no matter what it took. No one would take her son away from her. Not now, not ever. Anna stood frozen, her emotions a whirlwind of disbelief, anger, and heartbreak. Elizabeth's words cut deep, unraveling the life she had built around the belief that Felipe was Miguel's son. The revelation that Miguel had been deceived, that the DNA test had been tampered with, and that Felipe was not Miguel's biological child shook her to the core. Yet, even in her shock, Anna felt a fierce protectiveness over the little boy who had become the center of her world. She looked at Elizabeth, whose cold, calculating demeanor now seemed even more repugnant. The woman sitting before she had manipulated, lied, and abandoned her child, and now she dared to try to reclaim him, not out of love, but out of convenience and selfishness. Anna's heart pounded with fury and sorrow as she realized the extent of the deception. "Why do you need the child now?" Anna asked again, her voice trembling but still firm. Elizabeth's response was as chilling as it was matter-of-fact. "Much has changed," she said, her gaze unwavering. "It turns out my husband wants a child, but he has problems, and I can't have more children. We even considered adopting, but then I confessed that I had a biological child. We thought it would be better for him to live with us." Anna could hardly believe what she was hearing. Elizabeth's reasons were entirely selfish, motivated by her desire to maintain her comfortable life with a wealthy husband, rather than any genuine care for Felipe. Anna's eyes filled with tears, but she refused to let them fall. She couldn't break down in front of this woman. "Elizabeth," Anna said, her voice steely, "Felipe is not a pawn in your game. He's not a means to secure your marriage or your lifestyle. He's a little boy who needs love, stability, and care, things you've shown you're incapable of giving him." Elizabeth smirked as if amused by Anna's defiance. "You're sentimental, aren't you? But it doesn't change the fact that I'm his mother. I have every right to take him with me, and there's nothing you can do to stop it." Anna's hands clenched into fists at her sides. "You might have given birth to him, but you lost the right to call yourself his mother the moment you abandoned him. I've raised him, loved him, and I will not let you take him away. If you think you can waltz back into his life and uproot him from the only home he's ever known, you're gravely mistaken." Elizabeth's expression hardened, the mockery in her eyes fading. "You're not thinking clearly, Anna. You're letting your emotions get the better of you. But this isn't about what's best for you. It's about what's best for Felipe. And what's best for him is to be with his real family. Ana took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. His real family is here with me. I will fight you in court if I have to. I'll do whatever it takes to keep Felipe safe from you. He deserves better than to be treated like an object that you can discard when it's inconvenient and reclaim when it suits you. Elizabeth stood up, her face a mask of cold determination. We'll see about that, Ana. I'm not going to give up on this. I'll be back, and I'll have the law on my side. Ana watched as Elizabeth walked away, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement. The confrontation had left her shaken, but not defeated. She knew she had to protect Felipe no matter what. The thought of him being taken away from her, of being raised by a woman like Elizabeth, filled her with dread. As the sound of the taxi faded into the distance, Ana turned and walked back into the house, her mind racing with thoughts of what she needed to do next. She found Felipe still playing with his toy cars, blissfully unaware of the storm that had just passed. Ana knelt beside him, her heart aching as she watched him play. He was so innocent, so full of life and love, and she couldn't bear the thought of him being taken away. She knew that the fight ahead would be difficult, but she was prepared to do whatever it took to keep her son safe. She reached out and gently touched Felipe's shoulder. He looked up at her with a smile, and at that moment, Ana knew that she couldn't afford to lose him. She would fight with every ounce of strength she had because Felipe was her son. No matter what the DNA said, no matter what Elizabeth claimed. He was hers, and she would protect him with everything she had. Ana's heart ached with a complex mix of emotions as she held Felipe close. The shock of Elizabeth's revelations still lingered, but the overwhelming love she felt for her son pushed all doubts aside. It didn't matter whose blood ran through Felipe's veins. He was her son in every way that mattered. She had raised him, cared for him, and loved him with every fiber of her being. Nothing could change that. As they walked down the path towards the lake, hand in hand, Ana's mind continued to wrestle with the events of the day. Elizabeth's sudden appearance and her threats had rattled her, but Ana knew she had to stay strong for Felipe. The mere thought of losing him filled her with dread, but she was determined to protect him at all costs. She would fight with everything she had to keep him safe and secure in the only home he had ever known. The serene beauty of the lake greeted them as they approached, its calm waters reflecting the clear blue sky. The sight of the familiar surroundings helped to soothe Ana's troubled mind. Felipe, with his youthful energy and innocence, had already run ahead, eager to splash in the water and enjoy the warm sun. His laughter echoed across the water, and Ana couldn't help but smile. This was what mattered, the simple, joyful moments they shared. As they swam and played by the lakeside, Ana's resolve hardened. She knew that Elizabeth might return, and when she did, she would be ready. The love she felt for Felipe gave her strength. No matter what Elizabeth claimed or what legal battles lay ahead, Ana was determined to ensure that Felipe would stay with her. He was her son, and she would never let him go. Later, as they walked back home, the sun casting long shadows across the path, Ana felt a sense of peace wash over her. The decision she had made was clear. She would keep this secret. Telling Miguel's parents the truth would only bring them unnecessary pain, and they didn't deserve that. They loved Felipe as their own, and that love was real, just as her love for him was real. She wouldn't shatter the illusion that had brought them all so much happiness. As they neared the house, Felipe's chatter pulled Ana from her thoughts. "Mom! Mom!" he called out, his small hand tugging at hers. Ana blinked, focusing on her son's earnest face. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Felipe pouted slightly, his eyes wide with concern. "You're not listening to me, are you?" Ana smiled, shaking off the lingering shadows of the day. "Oh no, my little one, I'm listening. I just got lost in my thoughts for a moment. I'm sorry, what were you saying?" Felipe's expression softened, and he looked up at her with pure love in his eyes. "I said I love you so much." Ana's heart swelled with emotion. She knelt in front of him, pulling him into a tight embrace. "And I love you too," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. More than anything in the world. At that moment, all of Anna's fears and doubts melted away. She knew, deep in her heart, that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she and Felipe would face them together. Their bond was unbreakable, and their love would carry them through whatever came their way. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's warmth, Anna made a silent vow. No one, not even Elizabeth, would ever come between her and her son. He was hers, and she would protect him with everything she had. As Elizabeth sat in the back of the taxi, she mentally calculated her next moves. The thought of reclaiming Felipe had nothing to do with maternal instinct. It was purely about winning a twisted game she had started. Seeing the pain in Anna's eyes during their confrontation had been satisfying. It was a small victory, but not enough. Elizabeth knew she had to do more, something that would tip the scales in her favor and ensure her control over the situation. Her mind was already working on a plan. The courts were likely to side with Anna, given the circumstances, but Elizabeth wasn't one to be easily deterred. She had hoped Anna might surrender Felipe voluntarily after learning the truth, but it was clear Anna was more resilient than Elizabeth had anticipated. Anna's attachment to the boy meant Elizabeth would have to employ a more underhanded strategy. After arriving back in the city, Elizabeth checked into a luxurious hotel suite, a place where she could think and plot without any distractions. She reveled in the comfort and attention of the hotel staff, enjoying the temporary escape from the reality that awaited her. Yet, in the back of her mind, she knew that time was running out. Rowan's patience was thin, and his demand for her to bring back Felipe was growing more insistent. Elizabeth called Alexis, her old accomplice, hoping to rekindle their previous arrangement. Alexis had been a valuable asset in the past, helping to switch the DNA test results that had convinced Miguel he was Felipe's father. But as they met in the cafe, Elizabeth could sense Alexis's hesitation. The woman was wary, and rightfully so. Getting involved with Elizabeth had brought her nothing but trouble. Still, Elizabeth knew how to manipulate people, and she played her cards well. The threat of exposing Alexis's role in the DNA test switch was enough to bring her back under Elizabeth's influence. The promise of a better life in Italy, with the potential of marrying a millionaire, was a tantalizing carrot. But when Alexis refused, Elizabeth resorted to the stick, reminding her that she could easily destroy her life by revealing the truth to the authorities. Cornered, Alexis had no choice but to comply. She provided Elizabeth with a contact, someone who might be able to help with her scheme, though even Alexis seemed unsure about this person. But Elizabeth was desperate, and she would take any lead she could get. Later that evening, alone in her opulent hotel suite, Elizabeth dialed the number Alexis had given her. The phone rang a few times before a deep voice answered. "Who is this?" the man asked, his tone cautious. "Let's just say I'm someone who needs a particular kind of help," Elizabeth replied smoothly, leaning back on the plush sofa. "I was given your number by a mutual acquaintance. I have a situation that requires a delicate touch." There was a pause on the other end of the line before the man spoke again. "I see. And what exactly do you need?" Elizabeth's lips curled into a sly smile. "I need to reclaim something that belongs to me. There's a child involved, my child. But the legal system isn't exactly in my favor. I need someone who can make things happen without raising too many questions." The man on the other end let out a low hum, considering her words. "That's a tall order. I don't deal with situations involving children lightly. I'm willing to pay whatever it takes," Elizabeth said, her voice firm. "I need this done quickly and quietly. The boy has been taken from me, and I want him back. You help me, and you'll be well compensated." There was another pause, this one longer than before. Elizabeth's heart raced, but she kept her voice calm and controlled. Finally, the man spoke. "All right, I'll consider it. But I need more details before I agree to anything. If this is as complicated as it sounds, we'll need to meet in person." "Of course," Elizabeth agreed, sensing that she was close to securing the help she needed. "Name the time and place, and I'll be there." The man gave her an address and a time for the next day. As she hung up the phone, Elizabeth felt a surge of confidence. This man, whoever he was, seemed to understand the kind of help she was looking for. With his assistance, she could finally take Felipe away from Anna and secure her position in Rowan's life. As she prepared for the meeting, Elizabeth allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The game was far from over, but she was already laying the groundwork for her next move. Anna might have the upper hand now, but Elizabeth was determined to turn the tide in her favor. She would get what she wanted, no matter the cost. The next day, Elizabeth dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that projected both power and sophistication. She needed to make a strong impression on this mysterious man to ensure he saw her as a serious client. When she arrived at the designated meeting place, a discreet cafe in a quieter part of the city, she spotted a man sitting alone at a corner table. His appearance was unremarkable, but there was something about his demeanor that made her cautious. Elizabeth approached him confidently and sat down without waiting for an invitation. "I assume you're the one I'm here to meet?" she asked, her tone direct. The man nodded slowly, his eyes scanning her with a calculating gaze. "And you must be Elizabeth. Let's get straight to the point. Tell me exactly what you need done." Elizabeth leaned in, lowering her voice. "I need to reclaim my son from a woman who has no right to him. The courts won't help me, so I need someone who can operate outside the law." Discreetly, the man listened carefully, nodding occasionally. When she finished, he sat back, considering her words. "This is a risky business you're talking about. There are no guarantees, and if things go wrong, it could get very messy." "I'm aware of the risks," Elizabeth replied, her voice steady. "But I'm willing to take them. I'll pay whatever it takes to make this happen." The man nodded again, then leaned forward, his voice low and serious. "Very well, I'll take the job. But understand this, once we start, there's no turning back. Are you prepared for that?" Elizabeth met his gaze, her determination unwavering. "Yes," she said firmly. "I'm prepared." The man nodded, satisfied. "Then we'll begin immediately. I'll be in touch with the next steps." As Elizabeth left the cafe, she felt a cold satisfaction settle over her. She had taken the first step toward getting what she wanted. Anna might have thought she could protect Felipe, but Elizabeth was determined to show her just how wrong she was. The game was on, and Elizabeth intended to win, no matter the cost. Anna felt her world collapse around her as the neighbor recounted what had happened. The shock of hearing that Felipe had been taken by force, right from their home, left her breathless. Her heart pounded in her chest, and her mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, all centering on one terrifying fact. Her son was gone. How could this happen? Anna gasped, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and anger. "Did you see where they took him? Which way did the car go?" The elderly neighbor, still shaking from the ordeal, tried her best to recall the details. I didn't see much, Anna. Everything happened so fast. The car was a dark SUV, like you said. I think they drove off towards the main road, but I couldn't see clearly. I'm so sorry, Anna. I tried to stop them, but they were too strong." Anna didn't waste another second. She ran to her phone and dialed the police, her hands trembling as she pressed the numbers. As she waited for the call to connect, tears blurred her vision, but she wiped them away, focusing on the urgency of the moment. When the police answered, Anna quickly explained what had happened, giving them all the details she had, including the description of the SUV and the direction it had headed. The officer on the other end assured her that they would send units out immediately to search for the vehicle and that they would do everything in their power to find Felipe. After hanging up, Anna felt a surge of helplessness. The thought of her son being in the hands of those men, scared and alone, was unbearable. She couldn't just sit and wait for the police to find him. She had to do something. Anna rushed back outside, where her neighbor was still standing, distraught and guilty. "Don't blame yourself," Anna said, her voice firm despite the tears streaming down her face. "This isn't your fault. They were professionals. There's no way you could have stopped them." "But what do we do now, Anna? How can we get him back?" the elderly woman asked, her eyes full of fear. Anna knew that the answer to that question was far from simple. Whoever had taken Felipe was dangerous, and they had planned this carefully. But Anna couldn't let fear paralyze her. She had to think clearly and act swiftly. She decided to call Carlos, her trusted farm manager, for help. Carlos had connections in the village and beyond. Perhaps he could find out something the police couldn't. As soon as Carlos answered, Anna told him what had happened, her voice barely holding together. "Stay calm, Anna," Carlos said, trying to reassure her. "I'll start asking around. Someone must have seen something. Don't worry, we'll find him." While Carlos began his search, Anna's mind flashed to Elizabeth. Could this be her doing? Elizabeth had threatened to take Felipe, but Anna hadn't believed she would go this far. The thought of Elizabeth being behind this filled her with rage. Without hesitation, Anna grabbed her phone and dialed Elizabeth's number. She didn't care about playing it safe or being diplomatic. She needed answers now. When Elizabeth answered, Anna didn't give her a chance to speak. "Where is my son?" she demanded, her voice shaking with fury. "What have you done with Felipe?" Elizabeth's voice was cool, almost mocking. "I don't know what you're talking about, Anna, but if something has happened to Felipe, I'm sure the authorities will do their best to find him." "Don't lie to me," Anna shouted, her anger boiling over. "I know this is your doing. If anything happens to Felipe, I will make sure you pay for it." Elizabeth laughed softly, a sound that made Anna's blood run cold. "You're so quick to accuse me, Anna, but think carefully, maybe you've made some other enemies along the way. After all, it's a dangerous world out there." Before Anna could respond, Elizabeth hung up, leaving her with nothing but the silence of the disconnected line and the terrifying realization that she was dealing with a woman capable of anything. Anna felt a wave of despair wash over her, but she forced herself to stay strong. She couldn't afford to break down, not now. Felipe needed her to be strong, to do whatever it took to bring him home safely. As the minutes ticked by, the fear in Anna's heart grew, but so did her determination. She would find Felipe no matter what, and if Elizabeth was behind this, Anna would stop at nothing to bring her to justice. For now, all she could do was wait for news from Carlos and the police, clinging to the hope that her son would be found quickly and safely. But deep down, Anna knew that this was just the beginning of a long and harrowing fight to protect the most precious person in her life. Anna nodded, her emotions a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. The events of the past weeks had left her exhausted, both physically and mentally. Yet, sitting with Christopher and talking openly about their respective struggles brought a sense of comfort she hadn't felt in a long time. Christopher's calm demeanor and understanding words were a balm to her troubled heart. He was someone who understood loss and regret, but also someone who carried a sense of integrity and decency that was rare to find. As they continued to talk, Anna found herself opening up more, sharing the fears and anxieties that had been gnawing at her since Felipe's abduction. Christopher listened intently, his expression one of deep empathy. "You're doing everything you can, Anna," Christopher said softly. "You're strong, and Felipe is lucky to have you as his mother. But you don't have to go through this alone." Anna looked at him, tears welling in her eyes. "I just want my son back. I can't lose him, Christopher. I can't imagine life without him." Christopher reached out and gently placed a hand on hers. "We'll find him, Anna. I'll help you in any way I can. You're not alone in this." His words brought a sense of relief to Anna, even if only a little. It was comforting to know that she had someone like Christopher on her side, someone who was willing to help her through this nightmare. Over the next few days, Christopher became a regular presence in Anna's life. He was there to support her, offering both practical assistance and emotional comfort. He used his connections to reach out to people who might have information about Felipe's whereabouts, all while continuing his work on the archaeological site. One afternoon, as Anna was helping the archaeologists with some minor tasks near the excavation site, Christopher approached her with a thoughtful expression. "Anna, there's something I've been thinking about," he said, his tone serious. "The people who took Felipe, they were professionals. They knew what they were doing, which means this wasn't a random act. Whoever is behind this has a reason, and I think it's connected to Elizabeth." Anna's heart sank at the mention of Elizabeth. "You think she's behind this?" "I do," Christopher replied, But I also think she's not working alone. There's someone else involved, someone who knows how to orchestrate something like this. We need to figure out who that is." Anna nodded, her resolve hardening. "Then we need to find out who it is and stop them. I'll do whatever it takes to get my son back." Christopher gave her a reassuring smile. "And I'll be right there with you, every step of the way." Their partnership deepened as they worked together to uncover the truth. Christopher's background in archaeology proved surprisingly useful, as his skills in research and analysis helped them piece together the puzzle of Felipe's abduction. As the days passed, Anna found herself leaning on Christopher more and more. His presence was a steadying force in the chaos that had engulfed her life. They spent long hours discussing their findings, strategizing their next moves, and supporting each other through the emotional toll of the situation. One evening, after another long day of searching for leads, Anna and Christopher sat in her living room, sipping tea in silence. The house was quiet, and the weight of the uncertainty hung heavy in the air. "Christopher," Anna began, breaking the silence, "I don't know what I would have done without you these past few days. You've been a lifeline for me." Christopher smiled gently. "I'm glad I could be here for you, Anna. You're an incredible woman, and Felipe is an amazing boy. I'll do whatever it takes to help you get him back." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world outside their small bubble of light and warmth seemed to fade away. In that shared gaze, there was an unspoken understanding, a bond that had grown stronger through the trials they had faced together. As they continued their search for Felipe, the bond between Anna and Christopher deepened, becoming a source of strength and hope in the darkest of times. As the long winter nights settled in, Anna found herself reflecting more and more on her time with Christopher. The warmth of his presence, the depth of their conversations, and the kindness in his eyes had left a lasting impression on her. Yet, despite the growing connection between them, neither had made the first move to bridge the gap since his departure. Anna's days were filled with the busyness of managing the farm, taking care of Felipe, and handling the countless responsibilities that came with rural life. But at night, when the house was quiet and Felipe was asleep, her thoughts inevitably drifted back to Christopher. She would sit by the window, looking out at the snow-covered landscape, and wonder what he was doing, whether he missed their time together as much as she did. The memories of their last conversation lingered in her mind, particularly the way he had taken her hand and kissed it before leaving. It was a gesture filled with unspoken emotions, one that had stirred something deep within her. But Anna was cautious. She had been through so much: Miguel's betrayal, his sudden death, and the challenges of raising Felipe alone. She wasn't sure if she was ready to open her heart again, even to someone as genuine as Christopher. Yet, despite her reservations, Anna couldn't deny the growing affection she felt for him. She missed his company, his gentle humor, and the way he had made her feel valued and understood. In the stillness of the night, she found herself longing for more than just the routine of daily life. She yearned for companionship, for someone to share her burdens and joys with, and increasingly, she realized that she wanted that someone to be Christopher. But pride and fear held her back. What if he had moved on? What if he didn't feel the same way? The uncertainty gnawed at her, making her hesitate every time she thought about reaching out to him. She told herself that he was busy with his work at the Institute, that he had his own life to live. But deep down, she knew that these were just excuses to avoid confronting her feelings. Winter dragged on, and with each passing day, Anna felt the ache of Christopher's absence more keenly. She threw herself into her work, trying to distract herself, but it was no use. His image was always there, hovering at the edge of her thoughts, a constant reminder of what she was missing. Then, one cold evening, as Anna was preparing for bed, the phone rang. Her heart skipped a beat as she hurried to answer it, hoping against hope that it might be Christopher. "Hello?" she said, her voice trembling slightly. There was a brief pause on the other end before a familiar voice responded. "Anna, it's Christopher." Relief and joy flooded through her, but she kept her tone steady. "Christopher, it's so good to hear from you. How have you been?" "I've been thinking about you," he said softly, his voice carrying the warmth that she had missed so much. I couldn't stop thinking about our last conversation, and I realized I needed to call you." Anna's heart raced as she listened to him. "I've been thinking about you too," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I missed our talks, our time together." "I missed you as well, Anna," Christopher replied. "More than I can say. I don't want to let more time pass without seeing you again. I want to come back if you'll have me." Tears welled up in Anna's eyes as she realized just how much she had longed to hear those words. "I would like that very much," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "Then I'll come back as soon as I can," Christopher promised. "We have so much to talk about, so much to figure out. But I know one thing for certain. I don't want to be apart from you any longer." When the call ended, Anna sat for a moment, her heart swelling with a mixture of happiness and anticipation. She had been afraid to hope, afraid to open her heart again. But now, for the first time in a long while, she felt a glimmer of something new, hope, and the possibility of a future filled with love. As the days passed and spring slowly began to thaw the frozen landscape, Anna found herself looking forward to Christopher's return. She knew that there would be challenges ahead and that they would need to navigate their pasts and their fears. But for the first time in years, Anna felt ready to face those challenges, to take a chance on love again. And when Christopher finally arrived, she would be there, ready to welcome him back into her life, and perhaps into her heart. Anna couldn't believe how her life had changed so quickly, but the warmth she felt being around Christopher made everything seem more real, more hopeful. As the winter melted into spring, their lives began to weave together seamlessly, just like the orchard they were planting. Christopher had proven to be more than just a scholar. His dedication to the farm, and his ability to immerse himself in the hard work of building something lasting, reminded Anna of the best parts of Miguel, but with a difference. Christopher wasn't just fulfilling someone else's dream, he was creating a new one with her. Each day, as Christopher nurtured the saplings and carefully tended to the land, Anna could see the orchard taking shape. She watched from the office window, amazed at how much he had accomplished in such a short time. The once barren land was beginning to flourish, just as their relationship was. Felipe adored Christopher, often running out to the orchard after school to help with whatever task was at hand. The two would laugh and talk, Christopher patiently answering Felipe's endless questions about plants and trees. Anna would often join them in the evenings, bringing sandwiches and tea, sitting together as a makeshift family under the growing branches of their new orchard. But there was still a quiet understanding between Anna and Christopher that hadn't been fully explored. They had confessed their feelings, yet the trauma of their pasts made them cautious. Anna could see how much Christopher struggled with the remnants of the false accusations that had ruined his academic career. At times, when he thought no one was watching, he would pause in his work, staring into the distance as if haunted by the memory of what had happened. And Anna, too, had her moments of doubt, wondering if she could ever truly move on from Miguel and fully open her heart again. One evening, as they were sitting by the fire after a long day's work, Christopher turned to Anna. "You know, I never imagined myself here, doing this," he said, his voice soft but steady. "But it feels right, like I was always meant to be here with you and Felipe." Anna looked at him, her heart swelling with a mix of emotions. "I feel the same," she replied. "I never thought I could be happy again after everything, but you've brought so much light back into my life." Christopher smiled, reaching out to take her hand. "I'm glad, Anna. You and Felipe have become my world. And this orchard, it's more than just a project. It's a symbol of what we can grow together, the life we can build." Anna felt tears prick her eyes, but they were tears of joy. She had been through so much: loss, betrayal, and the fear of raising a child on her own. But now, with Christopher by her side, she saw a future that was full of promise. As they sat there, hands intertwined, Anna knew that she was finally ready to let go of the past and embrace the love that had blossomed between them. It wasn't easy, but with Christopher, she felt safe. And that was everything. The weeks passed, and the orchard began to bloom, just as their love did. Spring turned to summer, and the trees bore their first fruits. The small orchard became a place of peace and joy, a place where Anna, Christopher, and Felipe spent their days together, growing not just food, but a family. When the first apples were harvested, Christopher and Anna stood together in the orchard, Felipe running around them, laughing as he picked up the fallen fruit. Christopher pulled Anna close and kissed her softly. "This is just the beginning, Anna," he whispered. "For us, for our family." Anna nodded, tears of happiness in her eyes. "Yes," she replied, her voice full of emotion. "Just the beginning." Their journey had been long and filled with trials, but at that moment, surrounded by the fruits of their labor, Anna knew they had found something rare and precious. A second chance at happiness, a new life, and a love that would continue to grow and flourish season after season. Anna's life had indeed transformed in ways she could have never anticipated. The years that passed were marked by growth, both in the fertile land around her and in the depths of her heart. The orchard, which had once been a mere idea, had blossomed into a thriving paradise. Christopher, with his tireless dedication, had poured his energy into the garden, creating not just a source of sustenance but a beacon of pride for the entire region. The orchard, now filled with apple trees heavy with fruit, cherry trees bursting with vibrant red, and rows of luscious raspberries and currants, had become a destination for many. People traveled from far and wide, not just to purchase the fruits and berries, but to experience the tranquility and beauty of the place. It was a testament to Christopher's hard work, a legacy built on love and determination. But for Christopher, the true legacy was his family. Anna, having stepped back from the demanding role of managing the farm, had embraced her life as a wife and mother. She reveled in the simple joys of caring for her children and creating a warm, welcoming home. The bustling activity of the farm and the orchard was the backdrop to a life that had become rich with love and contentment. Miguel's memory remained, but it was no longer a source of pain. Instead, it was a gentle reminder of the journey that had brought her to this place of peace. Anna knew that Miguel would have been proud of the life she had built, the life that had continued to flourish even after his passing. When Anna discovered she was pregnant, it was nothing short of a miracle. The news was something she had never expected, especially after being told she could never have children. The joy in Christopher's eyes when he learned that they would be parents was unforgettable. Their happiness doubled when they found out that they were expecting twins, a boy and a girl who would soon add even more love to their already full lives. As the years passed, the family grew closer. Felipe became a devoted older brother, always looking out for Luisa and Marcos, and the bond between them was strong. The laughter and joy that filled their home were a testament to the love that had been carefully nurtured and grown, just like the orchard outside their door. Anna often reflected on how her life had changed. She had faced hardships that could have broken her, but instead, they had led her to this place of peace and fulfillment. The betrayal she once thought would destroy her had become a stepping stone to something greater. Her desire to be a mother, even when it seemed impossible, had been fulfilled in ways she never could have imagined. Felipe's illness had revealed the goodness in the people around her and had shown her the strength she didn't know she possessed. Meeting Christopher had been another unexpected twist in her life. He had come into her life at a time when she wasn't looking for love, and yet, he had become the partner she needed, the man who helped her build a new life filled with hope and promise. Together, they had faced challenges, but they had also found joy, creating a family that was built on love, trust, and mutual respect. As Anna looked out at the orchard, the fields, and the home she had created with Christopher, she felt a deep sense of contentment. She had come through the fire and emerged stronger, surrounded by the people she loved most in the world. The future was bright, and she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together as a family. The peace and stability that now defined Anna's life were a far cry from the turmoil she had once known. She had found happiness again, not just in the life she had built, but in the love that had grown and flourished, like the orchard under her care. And she knew that, no matter what, this was the life she was meant to live, filled with love, hope, and the promise of many more seasons of joy to come. As we reach the end of this incredible journey through Anna's life, We hope her story has touched your heart as much as it has ours. Anna's tale is one of resilience, love, and the power of new beginnings, even when faced with unimaginable challenges. It reminds us that no matter the obstacles, we can find strength within ourselves to rebuild and find happiness again. So, what have you learned from Anna's journey? What lessons from her story will you bring into your own life? We would love to hear your thoughts. Please share one thing you've learned and how you plan to apply it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to bring you more stories that inspire and uplift. Thank you for watching.